All right, folks, welcome to another episode of the Counter Media Podcast. I hope everybody's having a great Tuesday. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're joining us. Well, we seem to can't get on the schedule on here because we've had we're doing 3 podcasts a week, basically. So usually Mondays and Thursdays, we're going to be doing the Counter Media Podcast, and of course, Wednesday. And folks, make sure you join us tomorrow. We're going to have Dr. Sean Baker on. He's been on Joe Rogan multiple times. We're going to be talking about the carnivore diet. We're going to be talking about some of the traditional misinformation put out by Western medicine, among many, many other things. And we got Chris back on. We're having some connectivity issues. I don't know if it's us. We're down here in West Virginia. We're having some snowstorms, so it could be us. And I got satellite interwebs. And then, of course, Chris is down there in the fascist tyrannical Australia, so there's no telling what they're doing with the web machine over there. But I do want to say hi to everybody over here on the comments. We got Evil Freak, we got Harold Shepard, we got John Rollins, Jason TG Sponsor, Metal Sear, who else we got down here? Mike Ken, Tommy Hager, Jeff Johnson, Wyatt Darrell, P. Renee, Paul, Lori Matthews, Ghost Ronan, West Virginia, and many more. Make sure you guys say hello so we can recognize you and see what's going on. But make sure, again, you like, subscribe, you're sharing this content. We appreciate that. We are live streaming right now on Facebook, YouTube, X, and Rumble. And Chris, how's things going on down in Australia?
Well, we're having some internet problems. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but the last stream we had, I was quite critical of Israel.
Yeah.
And then possibly Mossad are hacking my signal, and my internet isn't working properly. If I didn't do a bit of a workaround, I'm now using my mobile hotspot. But if I didn't come up with this crafty solution, Mossad would have shut me down. And that's just how it works.
These types of things happen when you get too close to the truth. So luckily, we know that you're far from the truth, so we know it's not Mossad. So with that being said, we can go from there. But
well, wait and see. If I disappear halfway through the stream, you know who did it. Yeah.
Well, first of all, we all know that you're streaming from a low security prison. We can tell that in the background. We got the yard back there behind you. We see some people back there playing some handball.
Yeah, they let me out sometimes. Today's not my day though. I'm on the off days. I was actually trying to set up my setup on my laptop in the next room. I've been on good behavior, and they were going to let me out and stream from sort of the lounge, sort of the common room area of the prison. But then they found out about my last stream, got the call from Mossad once again, and keep him back in his little room. Don't let him break out into the lounge.
Well, you're clearly streaming from the music room from the prison. They let you get that. Yeah. That's your 1 hour a day or whatever you get out there.
The arts and crafts section of the prison. Yep. So this is Australia. We've got liberal prisons. You can kill people and they'll let you have a drum set and some books and live streaming. It's crazy.
You can do it's kind of like the fact is in Australia you can do pretty much any crime. You'll be out of prison quick as long as it's not owning a gun, right? If you own a gun, you get caught with a gun, you're done for.
Yeah, that's actually the rule. You can stream in prison unless it's gun related, then there's no streaming.
Well, Australia must be ran by YouTube because it's the same rules. Folks, we got a lot to cover tonight. As a matter of fact, we were kind of like trying to figure out what story to cover. There's so much going on in the Trump administration is one news producing machine. It is crazy at the speed of which he is executing many different things, and it all gets wrapped up, and it's a little crazy. We're going to talk a little bit about.
No wonder why CNN hates him. They put him to work. Right? All the news you got to cover. It's like almost don't blame him. I'm getting a bit annoyed myself, to be honest. Give us a break, Trump.
Put on a business during the Biden administration, so they better be thankful for Trump. Oh dear God. I've already seen what you've keyed up.
It's only 4 seconds. So everyone in the chat, I have keyed up a Joy Reid clip in the background, but just to reassure Gary, it's only 4 seconds long. Actually, let's just rip it off and get straight into it, shall we? Just 4 seconds. All right.
This is a bad way to start the.
Take a deep breath for just a moment and ponder big balls. Take a deep breath for just a moment and ponder big balls.
That was all. Carry on.
That's the most intelligent clip I've ever seen of Joy Reid, to be honest with you. I gotta be honest with you, by far. Speaking of clips, I got one keyed up. Elon was just in the White House earlier today. I want to go ahead and play this.
If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to
that's the Illuminati sign too.
And if
I'll tell you from the Freemason, that's
the bureaucrat.
He's in the club.
If the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large unelected bureaucracy. This is not to say that there are good people who are in the federal bureaucracy, but you can't have an autonomous federal bureaucracy. You have to have one that is responsive to the people. That's the whole point of a democracy. And if you looked at this, if you looked at the founders today and said, what do you think of the way things have turned out? Well, we have this unelected, fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative. And this is not something that people want, and it does not match the will of the people. So it's just something we've got to fix. And then we've also got to address the deficit. So we've got a $2 trillion deficit, and if we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt. I mean, it's really astounding that the interest payments alone on the national debt exceed the Defense Department budget, which is shocking because we spend a lot of money on defense, but if that just keeps going, we're essentially going to bankrupt the country. So what I really want to say is, it's not optional for us to reduce the federal expenses. It's essential. It's essential for America to remain solvent as a country, and it's essential for America to have the resources necessary to provide things to its citizens and not simply be servicing vast amounts of debt.
Yeah, I mean, we are continuing to see interference with DOGE and just look, when you have people that are going through the government books and looking at the amount of money that's being wasted of our tax dollars, $1 million here, $1 million there, $1 billion there, and next thing you know, you're talking about real money. But the corruption that is being uncovered, and man, USAID getting shut down is amazing to me. So much corruption was taking place underneath there. We see what's been happening here in the United States the last few years. And the reality is that the CIA, by with and through the USAID and the State Department, has been causing, they have been doing government takeovers and coups all over the world. And they have a recipe for that, and that is cause dissension, cause disruption, start causing riots and protests, and then the next thing you know, you're having regime change. And what they did is they took that recipe and they put it right here in the United States under Trump. And we are being used, we are being manipulated by different government agencies. Our media is complicit. Of course, they're all about it. And that's exactly what we saw during the first Trump presidency, was all the tactics that we've used for regime change overseas being brought to right here in the United States. And that's exactly what they did. And USAID was complicit in that the entire time, because all it is a money laundering scheme. You start seeing all the NGOs that they're now finding out that, they were funneling, the State Department was funneling money to USAID. USAID is sending money to these NGOs. And then these NGOs are big donors to these Democrat different PACs, as well as different politicians themselves. So it's just one circular money laundering scheme that's been going on. And again, they've been using that apparatus all through the first Trump administration to cause regime change and basically do a coup right here in the United States.
Yeah, I completely concur. Happy to see USA get wrapped up. I'm generally, you know, I don't know how I feel about foreign aid in general. I imagine most countries should probably look after their own people, and if they've got heaps of money left over, maybe throw it out to the rest of the world or whatever. But US aid isn't even really these humanitarian things. It's as all the stuff you mentioned with colour revolutions and all kinds of shady business. So good riddance.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, foreign aid is social engineering, right? That's really what it is. It's It's not just like we're going out there and we're finding, oh, look at these poor people, and we want to just feed them. You know what it is there's always some ulterior motive. It's finding an area that we want to affect and that we want to impact and influence, and then we say, oh, now we're going to pump money, and then the reasons behind it we cover up with, oh, they need food, water, medicine, all of these things. And then the other thing that does is when we start cutting back that funding, then you have the crazy Democrats out there, and you know that's redundant, but you have Democrats out there saying, oh God, all these people are going to die, all these people are going to starve to death. The same thing they do with different social programs here in the United States. It's just absolute nonsense.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see the reaction to it. Because foreign power is, what do they say, some kind of soft power. You can sort of, the strings attached. You can do all kinds of stuff with it under the guise of humanitarian, even as we'll come to with Jordan and Egypt and Israel related stuff. You know, Trump obviously wants Jordan and Egypt to help relocate some Palestinians. That's a nice way to put it. And he was floating the idea of withholding aid to get them to do stuff. And, that's, maybe there's some rationale behind that. If you're America and you're sort of this big empire wanting to sort of engineer the world in a certain way, I'm not too down on that in general. And then US aid is sort of another level of sort of covertness of that. At least that sort of stuff that Trump's saying, it's at least out in the open a little bit.
It 100% is covert operations and anything that you can imagine under the guise of, foreign aid, and when it's actually not. I'm just going to leave this comment up all night. We'll just leave that there. Thanks, Harold.
Yeah.
Jeff, we are not going to be, I'm not going to allow bigoted comments like this at any point in time. So
he wants you to be gay, Harold. That's
Foster,
what Gary said.
Foster, welcome. Glad you're a new subscriber, and good. Glad you're enjoying the show, the content. Appreciate that.
Where to now? There's just so much.
Well,
look,
look,
he's cutting that. He's trying to cut all kinds of things.
Let's be real. Well, what you want to get to is we want to talk about Gaza. So there's a lot going on with Gaza. And again, going back to DOGE real quick, just kind of put a button in that. Is we now have judges blocking orders and are blocking DOGE from getting access to information out there. And this is another thing. And this is the Democrats screaming and crying and going crazy because they know that there is clear corruption going on, and they know that this information is going to be tied back to them. This is not about, they're not concerned about, some unelected person taking over the government. Elon doesn't have that power. He doesn't have a real position. There's literally, again, what has kept the Democrats in power for many years and ever even given them a chance to be in power is abject corruption that's been going on that we are going to continue to uncover, or DOGE is going to continue to uncover. So I find it very interesting, and I love the fact that the Democrats are wanting to screaming. It means we're on the right track, and it's going to happen. So, that's good. With that being said, I know, Chris, you want to kind of get into some of the new information coming out with, Trump was just recently at a press conference, or, they were covering him speaking with the King of Jordan. And I know, Trump has continued to say, which I kind of find funny, that they're basically going to clear out the Palestinians. They're going to level the place and turn it into, the bunch of condos and resorts and things like that. I don't know how much of that hotels. Is hyperbole.
Hopefully a lot. Because he always adds, and the Palestinians are going to love it. They're going to be so happy with this whole situation, which is unlikely.
Chris and I were debating this a little bit at the beginning, and I say this a little bit in jest, but I think there's some truth to this. It's like we've had a bad situation over in that region for a really long time, right? And it's been going on since, well, really before the creation of Israel, but obviously since the creation of Israel, there's been an issue going on there, and there is no solution that anyone is going to be happy with. And given the current state of Gaza, you know, it is a oversimplistic solution to say, hey, we're going to move these people over here. And I don't know where over here is, and I don't know the details. But ultimately, as many people that might find that objectionable, I mean, that may genuinely end up being the best solution. And I'm not saying it's a fair solution. There's nothing that's going to come out of this that anyone's going to like. There is no fair solution. There is no good solution. There's not even a real humanitarian solution to this conflict. You know, the differences between Israel and the people within Gaza and even the West Bank to some extent, it's irreconcilable. Like they can't coexist. And some of that is religious based.
They did say, just to push back a little bit, they did say the same thing about Egypt at the time. They just said, the Egyptians, they're just a certain type of people. They're just a violent type of people. They're always going to hate Israel. We're never going to have peace with Israel yet.
Oh, I'm not
70s or whatever.
Well, I'm not even putting blame necessarily on Hamas. I think it's, you know, I think, here's what I would say. I would say Gaza would be a really good buffer if we didn't have, you know, if we ended up displacing people that are already pretty much displaced. There's almost, you know, something like 70% of Gaza is leveled. You know, at some point, if you create a buffer around Israel, and maybe, yeah, you turn into vacations and vacation homes and condos and all this other stuff, or whatever happens. But I think you need like a neutral buffer area in there. And again, it may end up being kind of the most simplistic, the separation that is needed in that region that will allow for peace. Oftentimes, to get to peace, you have to get through a bunch of ugly solutions first. And this may be one of the best solutions. Now, I don't know. But the fact
it's not simple.
What's that?
It's not simple. I mean, I can't even see any chance of it actually happening. Kicking out 2 million people and keeping them out and then spending 10, 15 years. In one of these presses, I don't know if I've got it, the timestamp saved, maybe we'll go through it. Trump has asked that either you or one of your aides said that the rebuilding will take 10 to 15 years. So are you committing to something way beyond your term? And it's just such a massive project. And why get tied into that? You know what I mean? America, you just pulled out of Afghanistan for 20 years.
I agree with that. I agree with Jaeger Bagel here. I agree that, first of all, we got to quit sending money overseas, and that includes Israel. Here's my problem with what's going on right now. And I'll tell you right now, if I was President Trump, Hamas took American hostages, and this, by the way, should be the freaking response. I still agree with this. I don't want to send people overseas, but the moment you start taking American hostages, we're freaking done. It is game on. We're going to put the entire U.S. military on that border, and we're going to tell Israel to go kick rocks for a minute because we're going to go steamroll through this thing, and we're going to get our hostages back. That's how these things should work and are supposed to work, and quite frankly, it's the only effective measure. And if they want to give up the hostages, we'll take our hostages. They only want to give up Americans, fine. We take the Americans. When we skedaddle, we get out of there. But the moment you take American hostages, that's where we now have blood in the game. And I would level that place for 2 American hostages. That's how I feel about it. And that's how America should respond to American citizens being taken hostage in any circumstances. And we should not negotiate with terrorists in any sense. That is a good policy. We've failed to operate under that policy, which is one of the reasons that we've dragged out the war and the global war on terrorism in general as long as we did, because we got really good at getting used to negotiating with people that we should not be negotiating with, period.
I'm pretty sure, I'd have to double check this, but I assume, because you've got some Israelis that are also Americans. I don't think there's any purely American
It doesn't matter.
hostages, are they? Yeah, but what about Palestinian Americans? What if Israel kills them? Which I think they have. I'd have to double check. But surely there are some Palestinian Americans in Gaza, and surely some of them are getting killed by Israel. Do we have the same gung ho?
I think there's a big difference between taking someone hostage, knowing that they're an American, and or if we are specifically targeting those people.
But did they know they were American? I don't think so. They just grabbed whoever they could who was on the border of Gaza.
They do now, and they have known for a real long time. They could have given them back in by the end of October. Like, oh shit, we took some Americans. You're an American citizen. All right, we're gonna go drop you off at the Israeli border.
Yeah, it's obviously a complicated situation, and the two of us on our little stream probably won't be able to figure it all out. But that doesn't just mean that it's complicated. What else can we do? Let's pick this sort of crazy Trump idea because, hey, what else? And maybe that'll work. It's not going to work because, we've had the 16 months of bombing, and what has Israel got for it? They haven't really, in the bombing, I think there was one raid where they sort of stormed in and rescued a couple of hostages, but most of the hostages came from negotiations. They have killed some hostages accidentally. There was that incident when they came out waving a white flag and it was a mistake, and I accept it was a mistake. But Israel, just their style, they go in and shoot everyone. Even when you've got hostages sort of escaping or whatever's going on, Israel killed at least a couple of them. And the point is, after 16 months, you've got, 60,000 plus? I think it's way more. Like once you lift all the rubble up and all this kind of stuff, people dying, a lot of resentment around the world. Israel's got the arrest warrants from the International Criminal Court for war crimes and all that kind of stuff. I know, some people don't really like the international courts and international law. And Trump responded by sanctioning the International Criminal Court, and his advisors say the court are being anti-Semitic. But you've had all this mess for 16 months, and Hamas is still standing strong. And what's going to happen now? Trump has all these sort of pie-in-the-sky ideas, but they're not going to happen.
Define they're still standing strong. What do you mean by that?
Well, they're not close to getting wiped out. We mentioned last time, our good friend Anthony Blinken saying that they've replenished their numbers to exactly the same number they were when they started.
I don't know that that's true. I don't think we have any.
It's reasonable. It's like kind of makes sense. Like when they first started bombing, I'm just like, you kill that much people. What do you think the result of this is? People might be able to argue, oh, well, they've taken the hostages and that's fair enough. But just imagine you're a Palestinian living there. All you know is people dying. Hey.
I mean, eventually you're going to run out of people. And that's the thing. Like, there can't be.
It's 2 million. Is that what we're going to take it to? 1 million, 1.5 million?
Look, at the end of the day,
simple or humane.
Well, either is allowing terrorism, either is allowing for you to infiltrate a country.
But Israel's causing terrorism. They're even
define causing terrorism.
By killing people and causing people to join Hamas. Like, I mean, would you completely, is that, you're in Gaza, you don't know all the big geopolitical arguments or whatever. All you know is that you've lost family members by Israel. You've got nothing left. Your house is gone. Your family's gone. All you've got is vengeance. And then Hamas is going, hey, join us and we will get revenge for your lost family.
Well, can we not say that Hamas is causing Israel to kill Palestinians because they're shooting rockets at Israel, and then you are forcing Israel to respond? Because it's not like that Israel just constantly goes into Gaza and kills a bunch of people without some sort of situation that initiated that response to begin with. Like, this is almost always predicated by rocket attacks, by some sort of terrorist attack, or by whatever's going on. And I understand that they're pissed off that that the United Nations got together and said, hey, Israel exists, F you people, we're displacing you. And I understand the tension in that area. And we can sit here and say we wish that 1947, 1948 never took place, but it did. And we have to deal with reality, not with woulda, coulda, shouldas. Israel exists. It's going to continue to exist. And either the Palestinians can accept that and understand that that's how it is. And they can, again, what I would have loved to have seen, and where the people of Gaza and the Palestinians and Hamas and whoever else, they would have a lot more credibility if we'd gone like 5 or 6 years without seeing a rocket attack or anything like that, where we haven't seen clear provocation from that side of the border, either the West Bank or Gaza, when we're seeing that take place, and by the way, those are mostly being funded by with and through Iran. So,
but I mean, the West Bank is occupied.
That.
I mean, people resist occupation. That's going to happen all the time, and I don't think there's anything even wrong with that. I mean, that's just sort of how it goes. Israel accepts there'll be terrorism, resistance of occupation because they occupy it, and even with Gaza, because they did, because there was Israel in 48, and that's there. But then, particularly with Gaza and the West Bank, they took them through war through 1967. They took 3 places from Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. They took the Golan Heights, West Bank, and Gaza, and they've basically occupied all of them ever since. They did pull out of Gaza in 2005, and they always pat themselves on the back on that, but they've still kept it occupied. Gaza can't exist as a country. They can't have any trade. They can't do all kinds of things that a normal country would be expected to do, and they're living a crap life where Israel controls everything that goes in there. And, of course, people are going to be resistant to that, and you're going to get these rockets and all these kind of things, and it should be worth mentioning, not to justify the rockets, but because they're so inferior, and Israel has the Iron Dome and all these kind of things, the deaths are, compared to what Israel does, it's not even, like, I'm pretty sure, I looked it up, the entire history going back 2 decades, the number of people that have died from Hamas rockets, I'm pretty sure Israel would kill that many people in Gaza in a week or 2, or a month, or let's say 2 months, to be safe. So 2 decades worth of rockets justifies, because Israel go and they bomb, they kill thousands of people a time from these rockets that are essentially flying like water pipes. And sure, if you get hit directly by them, it can kill you, and some people have died. But
if somebody's shooting at me and they miss, I'm still going to kill them. Like that's not a good.
But it goes both ways.
Even when we talk about the Golan Heights, and we talk about some of these other incursions from Israel, most of those were, again, those were at least Israel will justify those by previous actions coming from those locations. I mean, it wasn't just like they said, hey, now we're just taking this over. Like, we're having attacks, we're having staging areas, we're having all these things take place. We have a military industrial, a military complex being produced in Palestine to wage war on Israel. That is what is going on. And by the way, a lot of that was done through humanitarian aid, where they're taking this aid, they're turning it into tunnels, they're turning it into other military things. I'm not saying that Israel isn't at fault and doesn't provoke Hamas and some of these other issues, but the fact is that, like, there is no good solution. There never has been. And as far as something you might say, hey, look, Trump's solution is crazy and it's not a good solution. Well, I haven't heard a good solution yet. I don't even know that I've heard anyone say, hey, this is the answer. This is how we're going to do it. And quite frankly, we don't know if any of those are going to work anyhow. But the other part of this is that every time that Palestinians and the terrorist networks within their Hamas has been given breathing room and or access to funds and things like that, they've capitalized that and turned that into military action against Israel. And you can say, hey, it's because they're occupied. That's fine. And it's, like after we took over Japan after World War II, like we can say, hey, you know what, they're occupying. We could have had Japanese attacking us, and quite frankly, they could still make that case today if suddenly they started bombing, attacking, and doing IEDs against Americans in Japan.
I think it was a different kind of occupation. I don't think America was doing to Japan.
I absolutely agree with that. I don't disagree with that. But the point is like, somebody has to end the violence, and either the violence ends because of brute force and more violence, like we kill people till we run out of people, which actually is a solution. It's not a good one. And by the way, that would be the Palestinians choosing that solution. Hamas, Hezbollah choosing that solution, because I don't think you have to say, look, we will not accept or tolerate terrorist violence anymore.
My internet is going crazy. Total Moss, can you hear me?
What's that?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm cutting in or out. My internet's going a little bit crazy. We'll see how we go. But yeah, just sometimes it cuts out, and I might have to swap back to my other connection. But I think I'm still here. Am I all choppy and all kind of crazy looking?
A little bit
like
from time to time. Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, I can hear you. It just cuts out sometimes. I miss some of your points, but that's probably okay. I'll survive if I don't hear them. But sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. But you're cutting out a little bit.
That's fair. No, like Chuck Smith says, somehow the variety of soldiers, given Jordan's history with Black September, do we really think that they will take in people from Gaza as far back as World War I? T.E. Lawrence in his books, 7 Pillars of Wisdom, he said no one in the region liked them. Who will take them in?
Yeah. What I was saying was
Well, I think you had some media to share with us too.
Yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah, I agree with that. I want to go through some of the money because, look, here we are talking about it, but at the end of the day, why is this America's issue? It really shouldn't be. But it's complicated, and America should be drawn in to this mess that's been a mess for ages and will be a mess for ages. This is the thing. People think, oh, well, you just move them out and you move them to the condos and boom, and then there's going to be peace. That's just so naive because, as I was saying before, Hamas, they're still around after 16 months. We could have another 16 months of fighting for all we know. Because Trump's solution is he comes in after Israel wins and completely obliterates Hamas. But for every one Hamas you kill, you get another one popping up. We're never even going to get to that point. So here we are talking about this solution that's never going to be on the cards because Israel probably won't defeat Hamas unless they nuke them, and there'll be people going, oh, there you go, you just got to nuke them and blah, 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 blah. But in terms of
I don't think that Israel has not defeated Hamas because Israel couldn't.
Because they're still around.
I think that Israel hasn't defeated Hamas.
Yeah, they could. They could nuke them, exactly.
Well, I don't know.
With their nukes that they have secretly and...
Well, I don't know.
Or massive force, Yeah, I know what you mean.
I think they could absolutely move through Gaza with a massive force and... Mm-hmm. I think Israel is aware of the optics. I think they are showing some restraint. I think they're actually showing more restraint than people give them credit for, because they absolutely could. They could roll through Gaza, clear every structure, take Gaza piece by piece. It's not that large of a region. They could probably roll through there in a month or two. And literally, if you resist them, they kill you. They absolutely could. They could run with tanks. They could run with people, bulldozers, and just level that place if they could. So I do think that Israel is showing some restraint. I think they absolutely could. And let me tell you something. There is a point where we can say, hey, when you kill terrorists, it creates more terrorists. Okay, that's fine. But at some point, there's also a point where it's like, hey, that terrorist organization isn't being very, if I join there, I'm just going to die. And there is some, I think terrorist organizations.
People have nothing else to live for. They, that's still
I don't know a deterrent. I don't know that there's a large population in that, but I do think that one of the main reasons that terrorist organizations still exist and are able to recruit is because we haven't taken a zero tolerance policy on terrorists, and that whether that be the United States, whether that be whatever superpower out there, we've tolerated terrorists because we prolong war because we try to take a diplomatic approach to war in modern times. In past history, if this was pre-1900, there would be no terrorists because they'd all be dead. But again, we try to fight these humanitarian wars when there's no such thing, and all it does is it drags out war and ends up killing a lot more people. And yes, it does allow us to recruit more terrorists to this side because they always have this glimmer of hope when there shouldn't be any.
But there's no way you can argue Israel has been fighting a humanitarian war and being all lovey-dovey. Sure, they are somewhat restrained, but we've gotten to the point where Trump's saying they have to leave because there's nothing left. This is not, they have given it a fair bit. They've probably given Gaza as much as they could without the entire world being outraged.
Why didn't they hand over the hostages after day 2 of this war?
Well, because they captured them for a reason. They're going to hang on to them to try and exchange. It's not like some bombs. They knew the bombs were coming.
Gaza would not look like it is if 2 things happened. Number 1, they had never committed the acts they committed on October 7th. Number 2, if a week after October 7th, they handed over the hostages and said, hey, came to came to a negotiation table in good faith, but they decided not to do that. So like there is no like if again, if my neighbors come and kidnap my family, I don't care what happens. I'm going to that house. If they don't bring my kids out, I'm going into that house, and nobody is coming out of that house. Like I don't know.
That is the thinking of October 7. That's exactly the thinking of October 7. We're coming to your house and we're killing people and we're fucking, sorry, excuse my language, we're screwing everything up. I might switch over to my Wi-Fi, so I might drop out for half a second. So maybe you maybe wing it for like 30 seconds, and hopefully I'll be back with a better connection. Maybe
I'm not gonna be able to handle it, Chris.
What's going on here?
All right,
telling you, it's a Mossad attack.
Whether it's the folks in the comments now, which I've seen nothing but good, respectful comments, or people that have watched this later on. Look, if you're going to watch this show and you are not mature enough to handle divergent thoughts, opinions, and things like that, this isn't the show for you. I don't care if you're pro-Palestinian. I don't care if you're pro-Israel. I don't care, I do care if you're going to come on here and spew a bunch of anti-Semitic nonsense. But the fact of the matter is that if you disagree with Chris or I, we want to hear that. I want to hear all perspectives of this. And that's what the point of the show is. So make sure you guys, again, whether you're live here or you are watching this later on, we want to hear your perspective. But don't just, take your ball and go home like we've seen in the past. That just means you're not able to, and you have an opportunity here to throw out your opinions and possibly persuade people. And if you don't take advantage of that, that's on you.
Yeah, look, I'll just say that I think our conversation last time and the conversation now is probably some of the best conversations you'll see on Palestine and Israel. Like, you'll have other people that are more knowledgeable or whatever. But in terms of like a respectful, let's like consider this and approach it in good faith, these things are quite rare. So I'm happy to be a part of it, even though it's kind of frustrating and Gary just doesn't understand the plight of the poor Palestinian people exactly. But he's a good sport and we have some fun here and I appreciate it. But yeah, my internet, I tell you, it's a Mossad attack. My internet has never been this slow, ever. Okay, I usually get 100 meg up, 5 meg down. Sorry, 100 meg down, 5 meg up. Now I'm down to 20 meg up. Sometimes I'm less than 1 meg upload. Anyway, look, it probably is a coincidence, but you never know.
Let me guess, Chris. The Jews run the internet company over there, don't they?
I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to go there.
Well, going back, look, I do not claim to be an expert on Israel. I don't think I think I am more knowledgeable than most. And I do, and we've welcomed several people on here that are very anti-Israel. I don't think any of them are anti-Semitic. I wouldn't put up with that. I believe from a religious standpoint, I really do, and I'm happy to put this out there. I believe that supporting Israel is biblical. I think it's the right thing to do. Now, I'm not conflating those with the Israeli government. And maybe I should say, I think supporting Jews is probably a better way to say that. I do think there's a lot of overlap with the Israeli government, but I also think that you can obviously support or be extremely critical or even have some hatred for the Israeli government and Israel as a nation and identify the problems without being anti-Semitic. And I think that's worth noting. And I do think that is a delineation that needs to be had in these conversations that you don't often hear.
I think it's a good point because a lot of people do share that same view of they support Israel for religious reasons. For me, look, I'm not, exactly a religious scholar or anything, but I always find that a bit strange because when the Bible talks about, say, I guess it's talking about blessing Israel and blessing Jews, with Israel, surely the Bible is not talking about a man-made state created thousands of years later in 1948, that you have to support that. And even with the Jews being the chosen people, isn't that sort of like Old Testament before the New Covenant where it's all changed?
No. Basically the only thing that happened in the New Testament is that Gentiles were given same access as the Jews. But even in the New Testament, even when you get into Revelation, it talks about that Jews are God's chosen people, and there's some things given to them that it's in there. We can do a Bible study next Thursday. We can do one Thursday.
I mean, what about, isn't the New Testament, doesn't it have the the crucifixion of Jesus, which mentions some things about Jews being responsible for that? I mean, didn't that change?
Oh, they were anything? Well, that was well, it had to be, because that was actually part of that was the plan all along. It was going to be the Jewish people that killed the Messiah, and I mean, so
yeah, it
was always going to happen.
It's just an interesting concept of, the Jews, they're waiting for a Messiah, and then he comes and he's killed.
I'm not trying to muddy the waters here with religion. I'm saying I'm putting out my personal. I have some personal bias, I guess, for the Jewish people. I also think there's a real component here when it comes to the Muslim religion. I do think that at the end of the day, the part of the problem with the Muslim religion is the fact that Muslims, whether you are a like moderate Muslim, right? There are definitely components of the Quran that basically say that, hey, if number one, there's a lot of things that it says about Jews. All right, so we'll just talk about that. But the other part of that,
I'll be back in 10 seconds. Keep going.
Yep, go ahead.
Keep going.
I do think there is an element here where it talks about basically, hey, we either need to have people convert or they die. And I understand that there's not everybody out there that every Muslim out there is saying, hey, you know what? We need to actively kill people that aren't converting to Islam. But I do think that if there was a certain level of power in the Middle East and or even in the United States or wherever else, we would see more elements of that. And as a matter of fact, in places where there is a concentration of power, Iran, for example, and other places, like there's a component of that you have to consider, and I think we need to understand. And I do not. At the end of the day, Hamas is a terrorist organization. They're willing to do some things that I don't agree with, and I will also say that most.
They're no threat to America.
That information. What's that?
Hamas aren't any threat to America. It's not really America's issue. I don't think they should be getting tied down in that. And I was just going to bring up.
I don't think they are. I'm not going to defend America's constant involvement in Israel, other than the moment that you take American hostages. If I was president, we had American hostages. Gaza would look a lot worse than it does unless I got those hostages immediately, and we can all agree. I think we'd all agree that if suddenly there was somebody like Trump on the border of Gaza with the entire military might of America, and we said, hey, you know what? If you don't get all of these hostages back, whether we included Israeli hostages or just American hostages, I don't really care. But my dog in the fight is the American hostages. They would give them over, and if we rolled through and destroyed them because they didn't, there would probably not be another American hostage taken anywhere else. And that is my primary concern. I do think that there are some interests that are tied with Israel and the U.S., but I am not necessarily supportive of I think Israel should sort some of their own things out, but I don't think we'll like how they do it. Because that's the other benefit of America getting involved, is we can temper their responses. So I think that's
I would argue that if it wasn't for America being so involved with siding with Israel, basically through not every step of the way, but at least going back a few decades, I think the situation would be very different. Israel would have to be more considerate of its neighbors and trying to get along and trying to make peace. But because they got the backing of America, there is absolutely no incentive for Israel to make any kind of peace with any of its neighbors. And I would almost be curious whether the events of October 7 and all this kind of would have played out exactly the same if not for America funding Israel to be so emboldened to sort of do what it wants, and let's make sure Palestine never is allowed to be a country. Because look, that is a massive part that we can't ignore. These people are living in no man's land. They don't have any kind of country. There's a source of tension. There can't not be a problem there. And to basically allow Israel to say, look, don't really worry about fixing that situation. I know people will argue about, oh, they've tried Camp David, they've tried all these offers. That's a whole other thing. I don't think those deals were very good. With Camp David, you can see Netanyahu talking about how he sort of manipulated that so they didn't have to actually go through with it. And even the Israeli, I forget his name, I think he was one of the negotiators. He even said, if I was a Palestinian, I would not accept that deal. People will disagree. I don't think Israel's ever really seriously tried to get a proper two-state solution with Palestine as a state, because they wouldn't want to, because of some of the arguments that we've sort of heard. They don't think Palestine deserves a state, so they've never wanted to give them a state. And that's a massive source of this issue. But that super chat, I would like to piggyback on, because this is another part of it. Because, look, this is a complicated issue. My strongest thing would be America should stay out of it. Don't fund Palestine, don't fund Israel. And I think that it would have to be better. We talk about, oh, well, nothing else works. How about not supporting Israel 100% of the way? And the reason why one of the big reasons why Israel is supported so strongly by America is because of stuff like this, of the super PAC money and the funding. Because I wanted to show a little bit about, where are we? Miriam Adelson.
Real quick, I just want to follow up on that real quick before we jump into something else. So if you think that if America wasn't funding Israel to the point that it was, you think that,
and not just the funding, but the security guarantees of
whatever.
If Israel tries to do anything, there's a lot to it. Yeah.
Material support, funding, all of that. If we rolled that back, you think that they would be less aggressive than they are?
Israel.
Yeah.
I think they would have to worry about responses from Iran and Hezbollah in the way they don't have to now. Like at the moment, they bomb Iran, they bomb Lebanon, they bomb Syria. They take more land of Syria, you know what I mean? And they do this because they know there's no way any of these Arab countries are going to do anything about it because America's there. If America wasn't there, they would have to play nice a little bit, unless they'd be risking getting wiped out, because they are a very small country and there's not very many of them. And they're surrounded by all these Arab countries, and the Arab countries won't do anything because America's there. But if America wasn't supporting them all the way, they'd have to be a bit more.
I do think, going back to what you're saying, I think that Israel, Iran, and some of the other Arab countries in that region would definitely have destroyed Israel, and this is why America has gotten involved. We gotten involved way back in the early. Back in the late 40s and 50s, where we knew we had to provide protection if Israel was going to be a state at all, because again, and then we've become this almost by default ally of Israel, because again, they also help us project power against Iran, against some of the other Arab states that are either not friendly now or haven't been friendly in the past. So I think there's some mutual benefits going on there. But go ahead.
Yeah, they can point to benefits of it'll help them against Iran, and Israel can give them intelligence against Iran and Hezbollah and this, that, and the other. But I would argue Iran and Hezbollah and all them are the main reason they are enemies of America, if at all. They're mainly more enemies of Israel, in my opinion, is because of this connection with Israel. So it's we've got this alliance with Israel, which causes all these problems with Iran and the whole sort of Arab world hating America, more than they might already do so. And then to justify that, it's but they help us against these enemies that are made more enemies because of this alliance with Israel. So everything that Israel does to help America is completely self-serving. They're not a great ally that they just do all these, they've never helped America in any war or anything like that. All they do is, take American money and buy American weapons and use them and give back intelligence that will help Israel in their own self-interest. And I don't think they're a reliable ally. I don't think they do anything for America's sake. And it just causes all these extra problems with America.
I think they project power and deterrence for the Middle East. I think that is definitely one of the strongest arguments as to why we're such strong allies, because we are essentially on the same team. And, we basically have pledged, hey, if Iran attacks Israel, or some of the other Syria, or you name it over there, right? If they attack Israel, we're going to be at their defense, and you're basically attacking us. Again, I would actually
so that's completely beneficial to Israel, not America. It's completely one-sided, the benefit there. That benefits Israel. How does that benefit America? To sign up for war? Like a guarantee, like a war guarantee, like World War I and the NATO guarantees.
I think it's much more complex than that. I mean, we had Iran taking American hostages back in '79. It had nothing really to do with Israel. So, I mean, we haven't been a friend of Iran since the revolution, for sure. And neither should we, because if we'd have let Iran go unchecked, and they would be a terrorist state, much, much more powerful than they are. And we have used Israel to keep them in check. And I think without the ability, we would have to have more U.S. personnel in the Middle East to project the power that we need to.
Yeah, it's not a bad point. I suppose that's about as nice as I can, charitable as I can be to you. But I think America's doing most of the checking against Iran, and whatever Israel can do, it's basically helped by American weapons and funding and all that kind of stuff. I just think, Israel might help America with its footprint in the Middle East, but should there even be one? I don't think so. They project power over there. Why? Like, as we mentioned before, America helped Iran spread by taking out Iraq and a few other mistakes or whatever. It's like the policy is just all wrong, and I'm all for pulling out. Let's extend DOGE to the foreign entanglements. Okay, let's cut this. Do we have to be doing this? Why do we spend this much money on this? Why can't we put that towards Americans and American concerns? And it's because if we can get to the Allison, so you're trying to cover it up. I was trying to get to the Allisons before. Gary's like, oh no, let's distract. Don't peek behind the curtain. But don't worry, I'm on to you. We're going to show some Miriam Allison, all right, and the donations, and the shady business of politics, all right. If I can bring it up. So this is Trump. I think this is what. When was this? Okay, so this is September. In September last year, as he was campaigning, he went to these two events. There's one of them here. And I just showed you the sentence because now he wants Egypt and Jordan to accept Gazan refugees. But at the same time, he sort of says this. This isn't a big point, but just while I'm here.
Back. We can't let this happen again. To suffer like you suffer. I will ban refugee resettlement from terror-infested areas like the Gaza Strip. We will restore the travel ban. Some people call it the Trump travel ban. And
that might be fair enough, but it's like, okay, we will make sure we won't take any refugees. And Egypt, you better take them. And Jordan, you better take them. Otherwise, we're not going to give you any money or whatever. That's not the main point of that. The point is he spoke at the Israeli-American Council here. And then I think, I don't have the full thing, but Miriam Adelson was there. And, bear with me, is this the one I'm looking for? I think it is.
Just as I promised.
Okay, so he mentions the first time around. So the first time around he was given, I think the same again, around $100 million. Probably go check that yourself. A lot of money at least to Trump's campaign in 2016. And look, this is how politics works. They don't do this for nothing. These people don't give out $100 million not expecting something. They expect stuff, and they got stuff. So this is him at the same conference talking about what basically Israel, what Adelson's in particular, got for them.
Hold on, I just want to clarify that. So you think that if IAC, AIPAC, and all these other ones hadn't been giving money to Trump, that he would be taking a completely different approach to Israel right now?
Not completely different, but he wouldn't have done all these things. Like he lists these things, with the moving the embassy and this, that, and the other, particularly the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights was massive. As I said, Israel took them by war. You don't have to get into it. I think they started it in 67. Other people say, they were provoked into it and they did a preemptive strike or whatever. That's what Russia says. That's also what Hitler said about the Soviet Union, by the way. Not that we have to get into all that. But I think they started 67. They conquered land and took them through war, which is, I'm pretty sure, is not allowed since World War II. We've come up with the UN Charter and various international law, which is supposed to change these sort of old ways of taking land by conquest. And so nobody, not even any American president, has ever recognized this land as Israeli. officially, until Trump came along after getting $100 million.
Just as I promised, I recognized Israel's eternal capital and opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. Jerusalem became the capital.
This is contested. Like
I also recognized Israeli sovereignty.
Just quickly, that's contested, and that's part of the problem. You have to come at an equal solution for peace, and there he is, just 101-sided.
Chris?
Who owns Jerusalem? So the capital of Israel was Tel Aviv. Jerusalem, East Jerusalem's occupied in the West Bank, I'm pretty sure. I'd have to double check. I'm sort of going a little bit off the cuff here, but that's very contentious, and that's just 100% Israel. That's a real impediment to the peace process, and it was paid for, in my opinion. You know what I mean? As well as the Golan Heights thing, and I think he mentions a few others. I'll just play it, and then you can counter me after the little clip.
Sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights.
I should not have. No one else has, because it's not.
Miriam and Sheldon would come into the White House probably almost more than anybody outside of people that work there.
Isn't that a problem?
And they were always after, and as soon as I'd give them something, always for Israel. As soon as I'd give them something, they'd want something else. I'd say, give me a couple of weeks, will you please? But I gave them the Golan Heights, and they never even asked for it. For 72 years, they've been trying to do the Golan Heights, right? And even Sheldon didn't have the nerve. But I said, you know what? I said to David Friedman, give me a quick lesson, like 5 minutes or less on the Golan Heights. And he did.
That's all you need.
Said, let's do it. We got it done in about 15 minutes, right?
Hang on. Yeah, so a complex issue for decades and decades. I just looked at it for 5 minutes, and I thought I'd just help out the Allisons, who, totally never asked for it, or never even... I mean, he knows they want it, and a few other things. And then he spoke again on the same day. I don't know if you got anything to... any 2 cents to throw in on that one, defending the whole lobbying situation?
No, I don't really... I think... Yeah, no, I'm not going to defend any of that. I do want to address this. So... I spent a lot of time talking to Chris. Chris is very conservative, has an extremely conservative mindset. And I know that you guys are kind of using this as a pejorative, and it's fine, and it's all in fun and games to some extent. But this is the one area that, Chris kind of feels differently. But as far as socioeconomical, he's extremely conservative. And these are all discussions that I've had with Chris, and we've had on here on many different topics. So, to say
many on the right oppose Israel. Some,
to say anybody is a dim when 98% of what a dim represents, said person is the polar opposite of. I'm not sure is fair. Matter of fact, I know.
And even saying Godward's law, that's where any discussion goes into the Nazis. I'm pretty sure the only time I mentioned the Nazis was that just talking about other examples of preemptive strikes. I'm not saying Israel's like the Nazis. I'm just saying in the 67 war, they basically said they had to attack Egypt first before Egypt attacked them. So they did a preemptive strike. That's sort of what Russia was saying almost about Ukraine in a way. And that's when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union. He was saying, I had to do that because they were about to invade. And there might be some truth there. I'm not even sure. I'm not an expert on World War II. But, just the masses of Soviet tanks that Hitler came across that were sort of there hinted that maybe the Soviets were about to invade. I'm not sure. Well, this isn't saying Israel is the Nazis. That's just a quick little aside.
And I've
Godward's law making me damn, I don't know.
I've even made this point, at least indirectly. Look, Israel has definitely taken advantage of certain attacks and used certain attacks where they respond in a way that doesn't necessarily address said attacks, but it gives them an excuse to do X, Y, and Z. They have done that. That's just objectively fair analysis of that. So, and this goes back to my point is like Hamas and even going back to the PLO and everything coming out of the Gaza, they know they've given them plenty of ammunition to justify some things that are probably unjustifiable and under any other circumstances. And I said this before, and I still believe this. I think the Middle East, I think the issue between Israel and Gaza is is literally a Rorschach test. It is you can pour into this and see it however you decide that you want to see it. And depending on a lot of this environment and how you ascribe and how your party freaking views the situation, maybe some religious elements. I've already told you, I'm probably swayed by some religious elements of this. But you can find whatever you want in this situation. It is not. It is.
There's good arguments on both sides, and you can just pick which one you want to take and make good points.
You can pick out. That's why I don't like when people use genocide on this. It's not genocide. It's not what they're doing. You might be able to make a logical argument. I don't know, displacing.
Doesn't genocide, it's all semantics. I generally don't use it because people get bogged down in semantics, but isn't a part of it like trying to deliberately destroy a nation, basically? It's like a people. I forget the exact wording. It could be a people, but also I'm thinking destroy a nation in part. No, it's not just race. It's not just race. It's also.
It could be a religion. It could be anything.
I think it could be a nation as well. Maybe we could do a live fact check.
Well, I've not been able to find the Palestinian nation on a map so far. I don't know if such things exist.
Well, see, that's where we get bogged down in semantics. They're trying to make sure there is no Palestinian nation, and if it's, it's like a country. It's got a government. It's just we don't recognize it as a country, as a nation, or whatever. So it's not a nation.
The deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. And see, that's
ethnic
where
group Arabs. Well, ethnic group Arabs and destroy. And
I don't think the UN, and that's not fair because they're not just going out there with the intent to destroy a nation or a group. They're destroying the people that are shooting rockets at them. No, and I don't think that they're getting rid of the nation.
They're getting rid of the nation. They want no God. They want no Palestinian state. That's a big part of it. It's not just we're targeting Hamas. I would have hoped, as annoying as this Trump thing is, can we at least agree that Israel isn't just pinpointing Hamas and, we drop leaflets because we don't want to hurt anyone but Hamas. It seems obvious with what's happened. It's like the plan from the beginning. And I wish I had them all prepared. There were a lot of Israeli proposals straight back in October or even before where they basically said we want to just completely destroy what's left of Gaza and scatter them to the winds. And this country is going to take 20,000. That country is going to take 20,000. And that's exactly how it's played out. And here we are 16 months later. Oh, what do you know? Gaza's completely flattened. I guess it can't exist anymore. And that was the plan. That's not an accident. Israel didn't accidentally completely destroy Gaza. It was the plan.
Well, I think in modern day we've for better or for worse, like we no longer understand war, and like I feel pretty indifferent to some extent. October 7th was a huge change in, like, if Hamas wanted sympathy for their cause, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, they lost it on October 7th. And that's how I feel about it.
What was I? Sorry, I lost where that page is. View tab. Yeah, so this is the UN. The UN definition does mention, the Charter. I'm pretty sure America signed under this stuff. As sort of bad as the UN might be.
Genocide is killing members of a group. So in Iraq, if we killed members of a terrorist, if we killed members of a terrorist organization, are you now committing a genocide? If we're killing members of a nation, are we committing genocide? I think that's a little bit loose, and I don't think that's the original.
It is very loose, and that's why. Yeah, it is very loose. It's a vague definition which could apply to different things. So, it's not like a Holocaust and they're going in, they want to kill every single member of the Arabs just because they're Arabs, and that's what a lot of people think genocide means. But this is more vague, and this is why I don't use genocide, because we get bogged down in the semantics.
This is a more realistic definition of, and this comes from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, so take that for what it is. The legal term of genocide refers to certain acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or a part of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. So if you're going out with the intent to basically wipe this group off the freaking map, to me, that's what genocide.
What's happening to Gaza? What's happening to Gaza right now? I
Well,
don't think they did it accidentally.
So
You know?
what are we wiping off the map? Are we wiping off
Gaza?
like define people of Gaza? Like what is
The
Gaza?
people that live in Gaza. Gaza's a political entity that people live under, and they have government and police and services and social services and whatever. It's like a government, but just not recognized. But as I said, like this is where everyone gets bogged down. I don't call it genocide. I just call it like bad. It's like kind of just doesn't seem moral or ethical to treat these people like that. That's because you say genocide and people lose their minds about it. But but I think same with ethnic cleansing, but that's loaded as well. But I mean, it's just literally the forced removal of people, and I'm pretty sure that goes against the fourth Geneva Convention, right? Which the United States has signed up to. Is that showing? Bear with me. Prohibits the deportation of transfer of parts of an occupying power's civilian population into occupied territory. Is that what I'm looking for? It's occupied territory. No, maybe that's not it. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Well, and again, even taking a legalistic approach to some of this stuff, I think is not beneficial. And it doesn't. I mean, this isn't going to be solved in a court somewhere. That's for sure, regardless. And I do think regardless, genocide is a loaded. I don't.
Yeah, I don't use it. Except
this just goes back to look. I have a fundamental belief that if we didn't see constant terrorist attacks, and you can say that Israel is provoking them all the time or whatever else, but if we didn't see constant terrorist attacks coming out of Gaza, we wouldn't be where we're at today. And I think that if
but it's a chicken and the egg kind of thing. You know,
without a doubt it is, but you're on a
and one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, and to me, Israel killing tens of thousands of kids is more objectionable to me than.
That's the phrase that all terrorist supporters use.
What? Which one?
One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Yeah. Well, what about didn't the Americans commit terrorism against the British in some way in your little war of independence?
100%. That's
well,
why we
hey, it wasn't. I wasn't there. I mean,
here's the thing. To me, it's almost the same as a rebellion, right?
Just quickly, can I butt in? Australia's like America. Australia is basically like America, but without the terrorism. So we didn't commit the terrorism against the English. So, but you guys did. That's really the difference. Well, English colonized, and you guys fought a war.
State. That's what I heard. 52nd.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Look,
I tell you what, I'd be like, I'd be joining up the local, whatever the Hamas equivalent is of the Australian Resistance Force. Yeah.
You don't have any guns. What are you going to do? Throw rocks at us? Get out of here.
Yeah,
the way that I view this at this point is like, hey, look, you know what? This is like a rebellion, right? And there's been rebellions in the United States. Obviously, we had the Civil War. We were founded on a rebellion, right? We rebelled against England, and yeah, you can say, a rebellion is justified, and some people will believe that, some people won't. But at the end of the day, like, it's who wins that. Who wins that argument is the winner of that war or that conflict or that battle, and that's ultimately what you're going to have here. I'm not saying
which would mean if Hamas wiped out all of Gaza, Israel on October 7, they have the right to the land, right? They'd have the right to kick Israel out and call it Palestine again because they killed enough people on October 7. But they didn't win. They didn't have enough arms.
And gave up their land to Palestinians because of that. But again, there is a clear calculus of what was going to happen on October 7th. Like, we all knew. And quite frankly, I thought after October 7th it was going to be worse than it is. As bad as it is, I thought the response was going to be much stronger, to be quite frank. I thought they were just going to go through that thing with freaking armored bulldozers. So, it is what it is.
This one, there's a good video. I don't know if you can handle such anti-Israel propaganda. I've got a good video which goes through all the propaganda about October 7 and the beheaded babies and even the burnt babies. Babies were burnt in ovens. These were all fake stories. Okay, October 7 was horrible. Okay, lots of murder and probably some rapes. But these stories about beheaded babies and the burnt babies, they're lies. There were 2 babies that killed, very tragic. One was shot and I forget the other one, but these stories are fake. So,
I don't think,
you know.
I don't, oh, you're responding to this comment.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't think I don't even think that's needed. Or
it's not worth quibbling. It's bad what happened, but that's part of Israel's propaganda war. And if you can acknowledge that one, you think that's the only little bit of Israel propaganda that we get, that they sort of embellish some of the worst stuff?
Every country participates in propaganda. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. And in America, the Americans sort of have a similar pro-Israeli kind of propaganda in the news, and most of what people see, it's generally in a pro-Israel kind of light. You will see some, Israeli atrocities on TV sometimes, and people make out, well, there you go, there's CNN, that's always pro-Hamas, because Israel kills tens of thousands of kids, and sometimes the news might report on some of that and show some kids that have been blown to pieces. People say, there you go, the media's pro-Palestine or whatever. But it's not. The media's pro-Israel. All the politicians are pro-Israel. We have to understand that the education and the information that most Americans get is heavily biased towards Israel. And that has to, Israel may still be the right party in all this, but we have to acknowledge that, like, most people are sort of swayed to be supportive of Israel through
I think there was
the media they receive.
I think the Israel controlling the media was
not exactly that simple.
Media, they had a lot more influence in the media several years ago. I do think we've seen a paradigm shift in that in the last. I don't know.
Palestinians don't have influence in the media. Let's put it that way.
What's that?
The Palestinians don't have influence of the media. Let's put it that way.
No, but the Palestinians definitely have their own propaganda. I mean, there's no.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
They spew a lot of propaganda that you can go on and find.
Yeah, it's pretty crude and it's not mainstream.
But people believe it and they fall for it. That definitely sways husband. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. But once again, got to finish the Adelson story. Okay, you keep trying to cover it up. All right.
All right.
But I had those 2 video. Did I show you the second one? I'm not sure. But he spoke at 2 sort of pro-Israel groups in September, was it? Last year. And basically said, basically Trump's got Israel's back all the way, and look what I did last time, and I'll do more for you. Better vote for me. I'm the best friend Israel could ever have. And what do you know? A month later, Adelson gives the $100 million to Trump. Trump sort of said all the right things. And, $100 million through the PAC. It was her husband that donated most of the money last time. He passed away, and she's got the money and continuing his legacy, sort of. So this one here. If Trump wins, Adelson could once again be instrumental in shaping American policy on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I mean, what does that mean? Surely that's not saying she can spend a bit of money and influence America's foreign policy, but I think that's exactly what happens,
because it's print doesn't make it true. We
can look into it and verify.
Trump's not the first or the last politician that has essentially promised to support and defend Israel. That's
it's not the first to get a lot of money to do so either. You know what I mean?
Well, are we getting a lot of money? I mean, they get to support us. That they're supporting different politicians because they have they tend to be more pro-Israel. I mean, if Israel had
but why give the money if they're already pro-Israel? Why give them any money?
If Israel had so much influence on American elections, then Trump would have won in 2020, and he didn't. So, and he would have out surpassed. I still think there was major fraud, and maybe we can chalk it up to that. That's fine. But the point is there's been plenty of politicians that Israel supported, and they didn't win. And the same goes for both sides.
I mean, both sides support. Biden said a couple of things like, hey, can you stop killing, maybe don't kill everyone in Rafah after you just told all the refugees to go there when you bomb their other home. They've moved all the way through the war to Rafah, and then you're just about to steamroll and just flatten a whole bunch of them. Could you please maybe not do that? considering we give you so much money and we do everything for you, can you maybe do us a solid as America, as an ally? And Israel's like, no, get stuffed, Biden, get stuffed, America. But other than that, he's generally pro-Israel. It doesn't really, I mean, they sort of fund both sides, Democrats and Republicans, heaps of money on both sides.
I think I don't think for a second, for instance, Obama was pro-Israel at all. I don't think Biden is really pro-Israel. I don't think most of the Democratic Party is pro-Israel. I think they say pro-Israeli things to get donations and to get support. And that's the crazy thing about all this is that the Democratic Party has been anti-Israel for so long, and we still have a majority of Jewish populations here in the United States that support the Democratic Party. That's the crazy thing about all
maybe the Democrats aren't as anti-Israel as you're making out.
No, I mean,
what have they done? What have the Democrats ever done to stick it to Israel? Like, they just keep giving them money. They give them all the money they want. They give them all the support they need. So like it says,
I guess it doesn't matter who's in power. Then I guess Israel wins no matter what.
There hasn't really been any examples of much else.
So this goes back to the original question. What would you like to see, though, Chris, in Israel? What is the proposal that makes the most sense to you?
Well, it is very complicated. The first thing would be America just getting out of it. I think that would just, even if, it's a mess and it's just going to completely go to chaos, I don't think America should be in there. And I don't think it would go to chaos. I think it would, I think America should stop funding Israel, but funding both sides, just stay out of it. It shouldn't be America's problem, just as a principle. And there's a good chance it might make things better. And maybe it won't. But it's just, it shouldn't be America's fight, I don't think.
I don't necessarily
agree with
that.
That's the main point I'd like to hammer in, because people can sort of argue about this thing. It's like, it's one of those conflicts that people are going to argue about forever.
Well, I don't think anybody here, and definitely I haven't argued that we shouldn't take a different approach with Israel. I think kind of our red line with Israel should be, hey, if Iran or any of these other nation states actually attack Israel, then we should get involved. But I'm not even sure about that. Like, why? Because what about Ukraine? Why Israel? Why not Ukraine? What about Taiwan? What about Taiwan? Well, I think there's probably a good argument from a national security standpoint why we shouldn't allow Taiwan to be attacked. I'm not there's just from a technological standpoint. The problem is that with Taiwan, where most of the different chips are actually produced, like, we should be doing that here in the United States, then we could have we'd have less to invest or to worry about when it comes to Taiwan.
Yeah, that's why I was happy about Trump. He passed some kind of EO about the chips or whatever it was, trying to do them there. That thing I had up for a reason. What was it? Oh yeah, this one. I don't. Okay,
sorry.
No, you're right. Money takes precedent. Okay, people putting in the super chat. Sorry, Jeff. Your little cheapskate freebie comment just gets completely obliterated.
This one.
I don't look. I think if China attacks Australia, I'm not sure you guys will have our back. What do you reckon about that? I reckon you guys will be like, look, our hearts are with you, but good luck. Maybe we'll give you some weapons.
Oh,
but I don't think. Yeah,
I don't think that's true at all. I think we would.
What, you reckon you'll go to war with China for Australia?
Yeah, I do. I think we would.
I'm not sure. I reckon it'll be like, you help the Kurds until they have a bit of trouble and you leave them hanging dry, and then Ukraine, you sort of push them to the edge to fight, but then at the end of the day, you're going to bail out on them too. And it's like Kissinger said, America doesn't have allies; it only has interests. And if it's not really in America's interest to go to war for China to save Australia or whatever. And honestly, the alliance with America makes it more likely for China to invade Australia, which is another thing. Because people always say, oh, you got to have America there to back you up for China. I'm like, I don't think on our own
You think
With
Australia would beat China? Get out of here.
No, I didn't say that. I said China would not want to invade us unless something related to American submarines or military bases here, provoking, getting all testy with China. China's probably happy to trade with Australia. I don't see why they'd need to invade.
Yeah, I don't. Well,
Australia.
I mean, I think the point is moot because I don't think China would, because that's really not their style. They're not. They have a much smarter and longer game, and they're executing it flawlessly. Instead of worrying about sending a bunch of troops to take over a country that they may or may not win and fight a war that they may or may not win, they're whittling us away.
Like Trump wants to do.
They got the 20, 30, 40, 50-year plan, 100-year plan. And they're doing
Trump
that
will
well.
take note.
Yeah.
Trump wants to do that. We'll take over Gaza and we'll do this. And we're like, is that the smartest way to go for America's best interest, to get all tied in with this military conflict that has no end in sight, by the way? That's the most important thing that I'd like to stress. The ceasefire is about to fall apart, basically. I think Trump first said, if Hamas doesn't hand over all the hostages by Saturday, he said it's up to Israel, but if it was up to me, I'd say, 12 o'clock Saturday or 10 o'clock Saturday, maybe all hell will break loose. And surprise, surprise, then Netanyahu jumps on and says, yep, completely agree, Saturday. And what was I even going with that? Jumping. I think I was losing my.
Well, I do think that part of the problem is that we are trying to solve 21st century problems with 19th and 20th century solutions that probably aren't as applicable, but it's the only thing that we have in our toolbox, and I don't think we've really executed a smart enough shift to deal with these 21st century problems better than we're just not equipped for it. Not as a country, not as a mindset, not as tactics, not like China is leading the world with these 21st century solutions to defeating the rest of the world. And, we're still worried about, basically putting cannons and soldiers on battlefields. That's our solution to it, or the threat of it.
So here we go. We've got the question from Metal C here. If the US can't solve it, who can? Maybe China can. You ever think of that? Maybe China's got some out-of-the-box futuristic thinking to fix the problem or whatever. America's an invested party with Israel. It's just flattened the whole thing to the point where they've got two arrest warrants by the International Criminal Court for being war criminals. I don't think they're the most neutral party to bring peace to this region. You know what I mean? Sorry. You can bring your thing back up.
I agree. I agree with this to some extent, Chris. Like Jeff's saying, you're under the impression that people are nice and would just get along if they weren't there.
I said it could go bad.
I do think the military might of the United States brings some stability. And going back to what you said, are we really allies, or do we just have interests? And I think that's obviously what defines an ally, is that we are allied with people that have more common interest with us, and I think that
can be beneficial.
And I think that includes Israel. I do think there is some projected power by with and through Israel that we wouldn't get without their support. And again,
but they do, as I said, they never help America with a war. All the help they do for America is self-serving. And, they've done a string of things, like during the 6-Day War, when the USS Liberty, it seems like they deliberately shot the American ship and killed a bunch of people, and they sort of say it was an accident, but I've got a link of the Dean Rusk, who was the Secretary of State, and he wrote at the time, it's like, Israel completely full of crap with their excuses. They knew that was an American ship, but they still shot it to the ground. And even if it was an accident, you imagine some other country like accidentally shooting an American ship like the USS Liberty, killing a bunch of American soldiers. You talk about capturing a few
if it was
American
British
hostages.
Australia that did it, and we couldn't find, what would Israel benefit from that? There's no benefit.
I forget that.
I think Occam's razor works here, that the most likely scenario is what happened, and I think that was probably an accident. I don't think there would be any benefit whatsoever to Israel intentionally targeting and attacking an American ship.
I forget, I can't remember offhand, but there are a lot of motives with the war that was going on, and there was America had sort of a spy ship. They were sort of looking in. America could have sort of monitored what's sort of going on with Israel doing this sort of invasion of Egypt and all these countries, and I forget all the details. I wish I was prepared to talk about the USS Liberty. I just sort of threw it in there. But there are quite a lot of motives there. And as I said, like, yeah, Occam Razor said maybe it's probably an accident. But, you know, the American government at the time was quite clear that, like, there's no way that was an accident. Maybe he's wrong, but I don't think so.
This is actually a good point. And going back to even your scenario of whether or not China would, if China attacked, would the U.S. actually cover Australia or any other country?
Which they wouldn't, but sure, yeah.
I think they would, but it would depend definitely on the president at the time. And I think with Trump,
I meant yeah,
Trump,
China wouldn't invade, but yeah.
But again, if China or some other country that we're not so aligned with attacked any of our allies, I mean, number one, most of those are going to be covered under the UN charter, and then on top of that, even if it wasn't covered in that, we would come to their aid, but it would be highly dependent on the president. Do I think that if President Biden was in power and China attacked Australia, I think there's a lot less of a chance that you would see Americans headed toward Australia at that point. So I think that's one of the other important factors. We can talk about whether or not the president actually even matters. I think Trump has shown that it does if it's leveraged correctly, if that office is leveraged correctly. Before we go any further down this hole, I do want to, at some point, doesn't be now, I just want to kind of get your mind working. You know, Governor Shapiro was actually linked to the Trump assassination, and there's a whistleblower. I'm just reading this off Twitter. Somebody else brought it up in the chat. The whistleblower, identified as a former Pennsylvania State Police employee, has filed a criminal complaint linking Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro to an alleged assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I haven't explored or went down that rabbit hole, but at some point,
it seems like there's nothing to it.
Okay, so you've looked at that a little bit.
A little bit. Ken Silver's done a bit of. He actually contacted, I think, this whistleblower, and kind of got a sort of a suspicious response. And basically, even if you go through the whole thing, there's really nothing in there. It's just a vague kind of thing. And anyone could write that up. Anyone can write up any kind of, I think Biden shot Trump, and let me write it out and put it in court. And,
I haven't looked at it at all. I don't know what merit it has or doesn't. So
yeah. I don't think there's too much to it.
Hold on, this is actually pretty funny. So, Paul said, "What if Israel attacked Australia?" Jeff said,
"Fuck them up." Fuck them. Sorry.
Nice chat. I know Israel. Whatever side Chris is on, it's going down.
Yeah. You know, Israel. They're paying all the chat. That's how it works. They don't just pay politicians; they pay people in the chat to support Israel. It's really, there is no limits to this Israeli influence all over the world, even in the StreamYard.
You're an Israeli shill.
I had my I didn't want to say anything earlier, but I did have my suspicions. You know, some comments, I'm like, is that what you really think, or is that $100 million worth of Allison money speaking? You know? Where was I even? Lost my train of thought now.
You were about to bring something up.
Yeah.
Good question.
Oh yeah, I think I was just gonna. Did we bring up that super chat before? Always got to say thanks. Yeah, hundreds of millions of super PAC money does not encourage behaviour that's in the best interest of the American people. I completely agree. Remember when Trump ran the first time, and he was at one of those debate stages having a go at Jeb Bush, and the crowd starts booing, and he's like, "I don't want you." Look, they're all lobbyists in the crowd. You know, we tried to get tickets, but apparently all the tickets for the audience, they're all lobbyists for all the other people because I don't want their money. I don't need their money. Lobbyists out there, I don't need your money. I do. You know, and that was the appeal to Trump, and that's not here. That's not. I mean, even when he got elected, he took $100 million last time.
Well, sure, but he was outspent like 5-1, and he still won. So I mean, he
still took money from the lobbyists and probably doing. Of course.
I mean,
and doing what they want.
What do we expect him to do? Is he going to fund his entire campaign and all his? I mean, if he did that himself, he would have ran out of money real quick, and he wouldn't have won. I mean, the reality is, including Australian politics, it requires money to market, which is essentially what you're doing, and campaign. If you don't have that, you're not going to win. I mean, that's why George Soros has been so successful in this, because we have people on the other side that are clearly, the left has done a good job funding and winning campaigns all over this country, from state and local all the way up to federal.
Yeah. I mean, even with, sorry. Just going to say, like, I don't see the US as helping. They're not helping. And if they stopped giving Israel all the bombs to flatten all these people, no one's going to be like, oh, America, you're so bad for like not doing that. They're not helping, I don't think. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that one.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this today, listening to something else. Like, how would we get money out of politics? And I think the only way that we could do that is if we limited it to personal donations, and it's like $20 a person or something like that, and let the politicians run on that and generate their own information. But they figure out other ways to cheat the system outside of money, whether it's because here's the problem with that too, is like if we did limit donations to just individuals and get away from these super PACs and all these other things, then the media would decide who wins elections. And that's a real problem. And that's kind of what they've done. I mean, the problem is that over the last, 30, 40 years, you've had the media giving millions of dollars, billions of dollars of advertisement and attention to Democrat candidates because they supported them. And that's the problem when we no longer have a fair and objective media, is they do cover conservatives one way, Republicans, those on the right, one way, and then they cover those on the left a completely different way. So yeah, money's a problem, but it's far from the only problem, because that's a really complex issue that I don't know that anyone has a solution to, because media, if we took money out, then media would, whoever's in charge of the media is going to decide elections.
I'm not even going to say who that is either.
Oh my God.
The pro. I said nothing. Look, John, I would support Israel, and I ain't giving a dime. That's what they all say, John. That's what they all say.
The left has controlled the media, and yeah, I think I don't even know how you would tie that into Israel. In a real
Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they all get they're all pro-Israel at the end of the day.
I don't know about that.
Israel.
That's right.
Trying to find that clip. I don't know if you've seen that clip where Nancy Pelosi's like, even if the Capitol was burning down and America was on its last whatever, one thing would still be sure, and that is our support for Israel, or something like that. It's kind of a ridiculous thing to say, I think. And that's the left, okay? That's Nancy Pelosi. Like, there's no anti-Israel party.
Well, Nancy Pelosi said a lot of shit that's not true, so I don't know why suddenly she's the arbiter of truth. The fact is that
that's just her allegiance to that.
For better or for worse. No, for better or for worse, there's a vast majority of Americans that have supported Israel for the last many years, and it's been inculcated into our society to the point to where that if you don't show at least lip service support to Israel, you will not win elections. And that's not because of some conspiracy or vast influence. That is because of a democracy in general. Like, the vast majority of Americans support Israal. I guarantee you.
I think it's the people, plus it's the influence of politics and media and stuff.
But what is Israel doing that just has so many Americans duped?
Well, it's like religion's a big part of it. They're similar, like Muslims are just different. Arabs, Muslims.
You really can't. Judaism, I mean, that's why it's called a Judeo-Christian society, and that's regardless of what people say. America is a Judeo-Christian nation.
But I mean, it's just a Christian nation. The Judeo part is sort of baked in. Yeah, Christian came from the Old Testament, it came from Jews. But yeah, that's just Christian. It's a Christian nation. Why would they emphasize it's half Christian, half Judeo? It's a Christian country that had Jewish roots through the Old Testament. Even that, I think, is sort of part of the framing that makes everyone pro-Israel. Like, you're not a Christian country, you're a Judeo-Christian country. Like, that's... I think that's a bit more, framing things in a certain way to get people to support another country. In answer to your question, what does Israel do to dupe Americans? Well, maybe say that their civilization is a Judeo-Christian civilization as opposed to just a Christian civilization, which would make more sense to me. When you talk about Christianity, you generally you call it Christianity. Only when it's talking about what America is, we slip in that it's half Jewish, basically.
There's a lot of overlap. And I would say that most Christians would agree that most Christians would agree that the Christian thing to do is based on the Bible. Like, you're going to support Jews, and you can conflate that with Israel or not, or you can separate that or not. I have a hard time separating that. And I think for good reason. It's not just like, hey, Israel is a nation at this point. And it is occupied, ran by people of the same lineage, or a lot of the same lineage, that come from the original nation of Israel.
Even that's debated. That's
debated. A lot of things are debated, but I think there's
I wouldn't take that for granted.
I mean,
there's a lot of scholarship that says they're not connected. They're different people. They converts from a different lineage. But yeah, I'm not sure. But I wouldn't take that for granted. That's sort of what's said. Oh, there you go.
I don't think that Judaism on its own is not a religion that goes out and converts people. Like, they haven't been on this big ministry since the Middle Ages to go out and convert more and turn more people into Jews. And as a matter of fact, the rest of the world. So I do think there is a preservation of people within the Jewish community that you can link back genealogically all the way back to the original founding of Israel. I think that there's a good argument to that. I don't know that to be true. I think that to be true, and I think that's worth looking into. But I'll tell you right now, I don't know if that's factual. But I also know that it would be a very good argument to go out there and say, if you're, I'm not saying anti-Semitic, but if you're anti-Jewish or you're anti-Israel, like, bringing up that without, I don't know, do we have DNA evidence of that? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's something that somebody can look up real quick and bring it up if not. But
there's two books I've got here somewhere. I haven't read them yet, but one of them's called The Invention of the Jewish People. I think it's by Shlomo Sand. He's a Jewish historian. And I haven't read it yet, but I think the thesis of the book is that, no, that's sort of a myth, this lineage. And if you look into it and you look into the DNA and you look into the history, it's sort of used to prop up Israel and get people to support that and tie it back in with the Bible, which is sort of probably talking about a different land, which is no more. It's not talking about 1948 Israel. And it possibly might even be talking about a different lineage for people.
I got a book upstairs that says the earth is flat and has a lot of good arguments to be made for that. I don't know that that is a defense of that. Sure. I think it's a legitimate argument. I don't know that I would trust the random. I mean, I don't know how anti-Semitic that talking.
He's Jewish. It's a Jewish guy saying, yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean anything to
me. Jewish historian. He seems quite respected from what I missed that. I'm sure it was great, but I cut out for a sec. But yeah, as I said, I have to look into it. But yeah, you can look up Shlomo Sand, The Invention of the Jewish People. It looks, he's like a historian. Seems very well documented in sources and stuff. And if that sort of does change a lot of things, because Americans, a lot of the support, it isn't sort of like so much like through the historical events so much. People will latch onto the historical events, but they'll be framed from the initial support of Israel through these sort of ideas of that lineage of people being connected. And as I said, this is a bit out of my wheelhouse. I have to read that book first, and I'll come back and I'll spill the beans on exactly how credible it is. But I would just say, from what I've looked a little bit into it, and all I know is that I'm not sure about this lineage thing. It is debatable, and history's it's hard to
I just think
work out these things from thousands of years ago.
I just think the nature of the religion, being like it's the way that they practice their religion, and the way that their religion was essentially hated by everything from Christians to Muslims to whoever else. They weren't going out and evangelizing and converting mass amounts of people to become Jewish. I think it's much more likely that you have a large segment of original Jewish people coming from the original nation of Israel that continued that lineage that was passed down from generation to generation through just family. I have a hard time, and I'm just looking up AI overview. It says the people of Israel have a long history in the land of Israel, and many are descended from the ancient Israelites. However, Israel is also a country of immigrants from many different places. And that's another great point too. There's plenty of
it's probably a mix.
Non-Jewish folks that are living in Israel peacefully. So it's not a matter of race or trying to wipe out Muslims or whatever else. I mean, once you start attacking the country, and I'm like, never mind, I'll just leave it there. I don't want to go back down that rabbit hole, so I don't think there's any into it ultimately.
Yeah, it's so funny. We were talking before the show, like, okay, it was originally just going to be all sort of DOGE stuff, and the judge has sort of put the injunction against them having access to the Treasury data, and I forget what the second one was, and we had all these things sort of linked up, and we sort of mentioned, this is Israel stuff. And I sort of mentioned, look, I don't know. We debated Israel last time. I don't know. This whole thing's kind of upsetting with what's going to happen. There's going to be so much violence and death continuing in Gaza through this plan, and it's upsetting to me. And I sort of said, look, I don't know if I want to debate Israel too much. And here we are, an hour and a half or so later, just 100% debate. It's been good, but it was just funny how I'm like, look, I don't know if I can.
Well, I know you got the most
do it again.
And I think that's.
Yeah, so you just got to milk me. You got to milk these emotions of mine,
Well, it's entertaining to say the least. But I think it's a really important discussion. Yeah, I really do, man. Like this is not a discussion that's being had out in the public space too often, and I think it's a good. Yeah,
definitely not in good faith. Like
you don't have neither of us are directly involved in the situation, which is almost the only way to have this conversation, right? Like I'm not, I've said how the reasons that I support Israel, and I am definitely biased toward Israel. You're clearly more on the side of Palestine, but you don't have family.
No, see, I have no bias whatsoever. That's what's going on here. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, we don't really have a dog in the fight, but
no, we don't. I think I think it's probably the only way that you can have a civil dialogue on this matter. Well, I think you're right, Drones. You're getting into the topic of religion of Judaism and the lineages of certain tribes. They're not the same. Yeah, but there's a lot of overlap there. I do think there's more overlap there than people would like to even admit. When you get into Jewish names, when you get into, I think I don't even know if this is possible or this has been done. If there's been any real genealogy work done on this, objective genealogy work done on this, I would like to know how much DNA is carried over from the original Israelites to Jews today that are actually living in Israel as well. I don't know.
Now that I know how to win this argument, I'm going to look into it. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, does it even matter? Like it really doesn't change the argument at all.
Well, it might change your religious bias or whatever you might want to call it, right? That might make a difference if it's. But
still, still strategically as a matter of American interest. I do think if you gotta like Gary, does the U.S. have more strategic interest in supporting Israel, or do we have more strategic interest in supporting Palestine? Well, Israel all day long, just objectively on the matter of that alone.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say neither would be the ultimate American strategic interest. That'd be my view of the whole thing. Because when we sort of mentioned before, like the clean break memo and stuff, and we did have politicians that were in the Bush cabinet picking all these things.
Chris. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Why? Because we're not chummy with Israel enough? We don't have that Israel bump?
Probably.
So that's what you got to do. To be a superpower, you have to sort of give Israel everything they want, maybe. Is that how the world works? I don't know. Look, I don't know. I do find this a little bit... It's just one of those subjects that annoys me. Because, all these shows, I mean, how many... was this, episode 15 of the Counter Media podcast? Basically everything else has been me almost cheerleading everything Trump's doing. So this isn't me with Trump derangement syndrome going, this sucks or whatever. It's just like, no, this is This is where he's getting it totally wrong. And it's against his America first, let's cut out on this and cut out on this ways and just focus on our people. It's completely opposite of that. And it's influenced by dodgy politics, I think, with money and, not just direct money to him, but the whole climate.
Well, the way that I see it, if I was President Trump, and I'm 100% on board with America first, I would still be supporting Israel because I think it's the smart thing to do. It's not just about, what PACs gave me money. I think philosophically and strategically, I still think it's the smart play here. Now, again, the other part of this is I do think that Trump believes, and he's probably true, that if, he makes threats, he picks a side, he projects some strength and power, that he can bring this conflict to an end. I think that's more of what he's doing, and you have to pick a side to do that, I think. And you can disagree with that tactic or not, but I think that's what he's doing more so. I don't think Trump's influenced by money. I really don't. I think he's kind of proven that time and time again. I don't even think he's necessarily influenced. But
does he really care so much about the Golan Heights being sovereign Israeli territory from the 6-Day War? Like, why would he care about that?
Decide what he cares about. I mean, he may see it as
but we'll just think, why, like, knowing Trump, like, why, I don't understand why that would be such a big interest for him to get that done, before finishing the wall, or I don't know, maybe that's a cheap shot or whatever, but, like, why is that such a strong thing for him, if not for $100 million? I mean, what's $100 million for? Like, people just, are they charitable? They're just like giving Trump money to do things he was going to do anyway, therefore negating the whole point of giving him money. May as well just hang on to your money. Trump's going to recognize the Golan Heights for free. Why give him $100 million?
Well, I think, look, I would even say whatever her name was that they gave the $100 million. I would bet that she's not just concerned about Israel. I think there was a lot of people that
she is. She's they're one issue voters, Israel. I think they're quite clear on that. You can look up the Addisons. It's just Israel. They're paying American politicians to do pro-Israel stuff.
Well, that's okay.
Not some other issue, not gun rights, not...
How much money has she given to Democrats too? And if we go back to what you're saying, it doesn't matter who you give it to because both parties support Israel no matter what. That's fine. But what I don't believe it took place was a quid pro quo, and I think that's what you're alluding to. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that you're going to influence Trump with a donation. I really don't. I think Trump's going to decide what he's going to decide, and I think that anytime that anybody gives Trump money thinking that they're going to influence him, they better at least be prepared for a 50-50 chance that they're going to be disappointed, because I don't think that they're influencing him with money. I think that money was given with the idea that Trump is more aligned to my system of beliefs, and this is the person I hope to win, not because of, hey, quid pro quo. Now, I do think that often quid pro quos take place in politics. I think that's a big part of what the money does. I'm just saying I don't necessarily believe that applies to Trump. And it could. Maybe he did. Maybe behind closed doors, he was like, you give me $100 million, I'll talk about Golan Heights, I'll do this. I don't know. But
I mean, it's not that clear-cut or simple, but you do make a good point. She could just be, supporting the candidate that lines up with her most anyway. But and I don't think Trump would do anything he's completely opposed to for money. But if he's sort of kind of pro-Israel anyway, but he wouldn't necessarily do the Golan Heights or to that extreme, that money could push him to just give him a little bit extra. I mean, he's a businessman at the end of the day. If people, that's just good business. People give you a bit of money, why not give them a bit of a favor back? Thanks for helping me win. All right, I'll give you I'll move the embassy. Oh, I'll do this, and I'll, I don't think.
Well, I think
it's probably a bit of both. There's some influence, plus he's down with that stuff anyway. But it has to have some influence.
Well, I'm sure it does to some extent. I just don't know how much material difference it makes. I don't think that even with Trump saying, hey, you know what, the Golan Heights is now part of Israel, or whatever other rhetoric he wants to use, it doesn't change the situation that we have on the ground. It It doesn't change anything. He is picking a side. He's clearly picked a side, and I think that's what you're concerned about. Ultimately,
yeah, he already picked Israel, money or not.
Sure,
the money would just make him side with them even more. Like maybe he might have just sided with Israel and kept him, giving them weapons and support, and you go for it, you do whatever you got to do. We'll keep giving you all the weapons you need. You fight the good fight. We'll back you all the way. Maybe that's what he would have done. But then with the money, he's like, actually, why don't I help you kick the Gazans out? You guys have done such a solid. I'll actually go to that extreme step where I'll help you do your dirty work, basically, and kick all these people out for you. Well, no, he didn't say he would. Actually, he hasn't been clear about this whole plan. And I don't even know how serious it is.
We started at the beginning of this is like, I don't know what he's saying, and I don't think you do either. It could be exact. I think a lot of this is hyperbole. I think a lot of this is, flexing some muscle in hopes that his rhetoric will scare some people into laying down arms and coming up with a more peaceful solution. Again, it's hey, look, he's already picked a side. He's on Israel's side. Now he's negotiating essentially with those of Hamas and the rest of anybody else that has influence in Gaza. And he's, again, putting that crazy thing on the table. It's like, okay, we won't kick you out. We'll do this, this, and this. And, he's starting off with the stick, and then he ends up giving them a carrot. That's probably what we're going to see play out ultimately. But that's how Trump does things. That's exactly what he did with North Korea. He's like, I'm going to bomb the shit out of you. My button's bigger than your button. My button
he brings
actually
John Bolton along as if he's going to blow them all up.
And then the next thing you know, he's stepping across the DMZ, freaking shaking hands with Kim Jong-un. So,
that's probably what he's doing, but I think he's out of his element here. He's bitten off more than he can chew. He can't win. This conflict's too complicated to win with those tactics, I think. And the only thing that's sure about this is that the ceasefire is probably going to end in a couple of days, and Israel just going to keep bombing the place. Trump just lifted the ban on 2,000-pound bombs that was in place from Biden. I mean, 2,000-pound bombs. I was thinking before in some other chat, like, I don't even think America drops. I mean, they drop the mother of all bombs or whatever it is, but generally, I don't think America drops 2,000-pound bombs like Israel does. But America, they lifted the ban for that. They just did another deal where they hooked them up with another sale of $7 billion of weapons. And that's the only thing that's we can be certain of. The war's going to continue for a long time. I don't think Hamas are getting. I mean, they haven't got them in 16 months, I don't think they're going to get them tomorrow or next week. It'll be months and months and months. And this idea of, okay, eventually when that war's over, I mean, just think about it. It's just saying once the war between Israel and Gaza is finished, then we're going to do all these things. But I mean, when is it going to finish? I don't think so. So it almost doesn't really matter what he's.
It's been going on forever. And I would like to see some sort of finality to it at some point.
Yeah, of course, me too. Yeah.
And I don't think that's going to, that's not, that final solution is going to end up benefiting the Palestinians. I just don't see it playing out that way. I think ultimately you're going to have, at this point, again, I think things would be completely different if we'd have seen like 10 years of peace in there. We're like, yeah, you know what? The Israelis are still provoking us. They're still pissing us off, but we are going to show the world that we're a peaceful people, and we're not going to allow Hamas, Hezbollah, or Iran fund us with rockets, and we're not going to put it with rockets coming out of this country because it doesn't. What does it do? Yeah,
but that would mean putting up with 10 years worth of provocations from Israel. And that, I'm sure you wouldn't do that if you were there. Like, look, I know Israel are provoking us, but we just have to do nothing in response for 10 years. And then maybe the world will be like, all right, I guess we'll let these people have a country.
I would do one of two things because I'm smart enough to look at something a little bit strategically and tactically and say, hey, you know what? I got one of two choices. Okay, we can either come up with a plan that is viable that says we defeat them to the point to where they're willing to back off, or we defeat them entirely. Okay. Or I would say, you know what, either if that's not possible, all right, then we have to come up with another plan. And that is either me, myself, and my family. I would probably leave. I'd figure out a way to get out of there. Or B, like the other plan is, hey, the Martin Luther King approach that, you know what, we're going to address this through peaceful protest, through peaceful resistance. And that has never happened. That's never happened out of there. You can justify their actions all they want, but at the end of the day, that has never happened. We've never seen that. So that was the only path forward. I think October 7th.
They did have the what was it, the March of Return or something? I think 2019. They tried just
one peaceful protest. I'm talking about a track record of many years of peace that doesn't include launching rockets into the neighboring country. You don't get to wipe your slate clean because you say, "Oh, we had one protest that was peaceful," and I don't even know how peaceful that was. I mean, it could have been like.
I mean, it was. I mean, Israel says they were walking, and then they sent arson kites. Okay, so they set kites on fire and floated them over the fence. So Israel shot a bunch of them, including people that weren't even doing that. They were throwing stones and stuff.
Fair enough. I did want to address this comment. Jeff Johnson said if Israel wanted to make the Palestinians leave, they could have many times over. Why haven't they? I don't think that's true, Jeff. I think that there's too many other people. They would have lost too much.
And there is asymmetrical warfare. It's not.
Yeah, even the U.S. wouldn't have allowed that. I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I think Israel, they're dependent on U.S. support. And look, you see the protests, you see the way the world has responded to, well, some of the world. I would say most of the world. I mean, I know not in this chat so much, but a good part of the world aren't too happy with what all the people that Israel have killed in response to October 7 in the last 16 months. And if they pushed it too far, it would be hard for America to justify keep sending him all these bombs to keep doing it. So they have to sort of do as much as they can. And you can see them respond. Sometimes they do a massive bombing and they usually defend themselves, or sometimes they bomb something and it's outrageous and it gets a big outcry, like when they shot all those aid workers. Israel killed an Australian, they killed a couple of English people. There were aid workers, and they knew they were aid workers. There was the workers' kitchen, I forget the name of it. I don't know if, no, this chat won't help me or whatever, but, they did, and I think it was deliberate. I'll have to, maybe I'll look into it for another show or whatever. But they deliberately targeted aid workers and they deliberately killed an Australian citizen. And I'm just supposed to cop that because, oh, well. But then they apologised. Yes, we were in the wrong. Whoops, we're going to investigate that. Boom, 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 boom. But if there wasn't an outcry, they'd just be like, oh, well, Hamas was in the area and these things happen and this is war. So they're sort of testing how much they can get away with. And that's a big part of why they don't just completely go crazy. That's one reason why they don't just completely kick all the Palestinians out or completely...
I agree with that.
Just wipe out everything 100%. And
I agree with that last part. I do think that Israel will do some things. I don't know if they, intentionally try. I know that's the case that's been made. There may be even some circumstantial evidence that points to that.
Because it was 3 in a row.
That does. I don't know what benefit that.
It stops aid coming in. Why would you? Israel deliberately targeted 3 aid things to stop the food coming in. Are you going to volunteer to go into Gaza and deliver food, knowing that Israel could probably bomb you? Probably not. I think that's a reason. And if you just look, they want to kick them all out. Why would they want to keep feeding them? Why would they want heaps of aid to come in? I mean, this is war. This is what they do. Sometimes you bomb aid workers to say there's no incentive to keep bringing in aid. They're complaining about, what was it, UN, whatever, the refugee agency of the UN. They were saying, they're all filled to the brim with Hamas. And they stopped funding. And a bunch of countries stopped funding. But then there was a report. It wasn't by America. You probably won't like it. I think it was by the French or something. But it seemed quite comprehensive. And it's like, basically, no, there's not really much to it. It seems like Israel was sort of lying about that. At the end of the day, that is an aid agency delivering food and much needed services. So they resumed putting in those services. And that just fits again. Israel doesn't want aid coming in, so they'll say they're terrorists, they got to shut it down. We'll bomb the, the workers' kitchen? I forget the name. Hopefully people watching know the event that I mean. It was sort of at the start of the war.
I remember the event quite vividly. I do think that there's at least plausible deniability on there that was intentional on Israel's behalf, but you could be right. But again, it's one of those things that don't change. I do think, just like Wyatt,
because they knew the routes. They were told exactly where they were going. And then they hit one, and then a little while later, they hit another one in another part of the route, and then a little while later, it was like a pinpoint attack on routes that they knew of.
Well, here's what's true. If it genuinely was an accident, and they gave all the excuses, and just were telling the truth, I think you and many people on the side of Palestine wouldn't believe them anyhow.
Wouldn't believe them. Yeah, that's a good chance. But I mean, as I said, you can look more into that case. They knew the routes, and the way that they hit 3 in separate places at separate times, one after another, it's. I don't think there's much plausible deniability on that one.
Well, I do know that they were saying this exact same thing, is that those were the same units that were being utilized by Hamas. And that is one of the problems with Hamas, is that they do create these issues, because if there is routes that are being used by aid personnel, they're going to exploit those routes and they're going to use it. That's why they put their bases, and they put military bunkers and ammunition supplies and everything from, schools, nurseries, hospitals. Like, that is one thing that Hamas has done many times over to cause these incidents where they exploit and they use those for propaganda against Israel. So,
that's true. Yeah, but these convoys were labeled. Israel knew what they were. Their only excuse would be if they thought Hamas were in the aid vehicles, and we deliberately bombed the aid vehicles thinking Hamas was inside. I don't even think they argued that.
Well, I don't know what they used to target the vehicles. And I don't know in Iraq and Afghanistan, we'd have, if we're watching vehicles, we're using either IR or thermal, using ISR. And then we have the vehicles that aren't supposed to be hit, marked with certain things that show up on those sensors, so that we can delineate friend from foe, because things do get messy sometimes. I don't know what was in place, and I don't know what capabilities they were using to target those. I don't know what vehicles I don't know what Hamas was doing that could have caused that. Like, there's a lot of things that we don't know, and just to say that they intentionally targeted those aid vehicles, I think that is half-cocked, to say the least.
I can't say for sure, but I think it's a reasonable assumption to make, knowing that the aid's coming through at this route. Maybe, I don't know if they knew the time as well, perhaps even. And they're coming through, they can see it. Surely they can. I mean, that's the thing. Gaza's this tiny little thing. They're surrounded, looking in from all angles. I just don't think it passes the what's the expression? The pub test or whatever. Maybe the pub test is the Australian variation. But what was I gonna? Oh no, I was gonna jump to. I was gonna say, okay, well maybe what's this? Not sure.
Yeah, I don't know where that goes. Anyway, I think we're going on 2 hours here. We'll go ahead and close this down. What I can assure everybody is that, unless you got something else, Chris, I'm not trying to cut you off.
I wanted to bring. I started this ages. Look how long it's like an hour ago. I think this sums it up. This is exactly why there's no peace, because obviously this point is meant to be. It's hard to be at peace when people don't. With people who don't acknowledge your right to exist, and this would obviously be saying, how can Israel be at peace when the Palestinians don't recognise their right to exist? But it's the exact same on both sides. Israel doesn't recognise Palestine's right to exist. How could Palestine be at peace with a country that doesn't even think they should exist? Not only that, they want to scatter them to the winds so they don't even exist anymore.
To be fair,
so it works both ways. That's why.
No such thing.
Well, that's the problem.
I don't know.
That's the problem. That's why there's a fight. They're fighting for a cause. They're fighting for a country. I mean, how could you not? You freedom loving, probably loving the American Revolution and the idea of freedom, whatever. Imagine being these people trapped in no man's land and just copping it like a like a bunch of wusses. Just like, okay, I guess we can't be a country because Israel won't let us.
Ultimately, the problem here is I've never seen a good faith effort from them, and I think that's the problem that across the board, from Palestinians.
From Israel.
I've never seen a good faith effort from them, and yes, I understand that
from both sides.
Well, that's fair, but at the end of the day, Palestine is definitely the underdog. They're at a disadvantage, and maybe they're not smart enough to realize it, right? I mean,
or maybe they're just too romantic. It's like they'll fight even though they can't win, just because it's principle.
Maybe, you're absolutely right.
And I don't, I can't hate that, even if it's not the most practical. It's, I mean, it's the idea, would you fight for a cause even knowing that you can't win, but just because it's the right thing to do, as opposed to surrendering, being submissive? Just, It's complicated, you know. There was another super chat here.
Depends on if you really want peace. And look, there was at one time there was only one path to peace, I think, and that path was Palestine making some huge concessions to Israel, and they thought they were going to use force to enhance those concessions or decrease their concessions to Israel, and that never worked. And then with October 7th, I think their chances toward a peaceful resolution has completely narrowed to almost gone. And, at this point, it may be one of those things that, the ultimate solution, maybe the only path to peace is, again, displacing a lot of people out of what is now rubble. And I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just a practical
But there
solution.
are still houses there
Maybe maybe the only practical solution.
Yeah, but after Germany, World War II, and all kinds of wars, is that? I mean, they can rebuild with the people still there. People are living there. We showed the footage last time of the people. They've just recently come back to their rubble homes, and they're happy to be there. They can still hang around while they don't have to be kicked out. That's not a just practical humanitarian. Well, whatever. That's part of the Israeli dream, which is what it is.
I don't disagree.
But yeah, I just wanted to share, because we've got OG, I think it's actually, we're bringing up some of his comments under another name through the show. But, he helps us, and a few other people, they help with the show, they provide links, and I've always forget to bring them up because, I've got 100 links and we didn't even get to them. So I just got to quickly show you some of them. So thanks, AG, for this. Okay, so this is related to the judge stopping Trump. Well, this video isn't related to that. This was AOC responding to some other ruling that went against the Democrats. So this is an older clip, but it's just pointing out that, I'll just let her speak for herself.
There has been thought, I believe, given to this. Senator Ron Wyden has already issued statements, for example, advising what we should do in a situation like this, which I concur, which is that I believe that the Biden administration should ignore this ruling. I think that we should.
Yeah, so just a quick one. They're open to the idea of ignoring the judge's ruling, but of course they're talking about if Trump dares do that, he's like he's a dictator. He's like Hitler, have to go Godwin law, thanks to Jason, But that's what the media.
The rule of law.
Yeah, so that's what they'll say.
And political norms and all the other
completely unprecedented constitutional crisis. Where is it? And then he also had this one. So I think this is the second judge.
Yeah.
To stop funding freezes. And apparently this judge used to be a major Democrat donor. So there you go. There's some stories I want to quickly get there just to show I appreciate good old AG throwing us some links. We don't always get to go where we want to go. But I had to quickly show them. And did I have one more? Maybe not. Maybe that was it. Oh, no, there was a super chat. Jaeger Bagel, total legend of the show. We've got to thank Jaeger Bagel for chipping in. Lots of good questions, lots of good comments. Appreciate that very much. And he's got this other one. Trump flipped his position on H-1B visas after accepting money from Musk. What say you? I think there's something there because there are clips of Trump saying H-1B is so flawed and it's a total scam and they're basically, you can bring in cheap labor and I forget exactly his arguments. Yeah, what does he say now? We need more H-1B visas. And I forget exactly what it was.
I mean, to be fair, Elon kind of went back. First of all, when that whole first drama nonsense started, Elon was all about H-1B visas, and there was some comments thrown at him like, "Hey, he's like, yeah, it could be a program, but it does need reforming." So I don't know where Trump is in all of that. What does that mean? And I would like to say a year from now. I would like to see a year from now or whenever, like what reform, if any, has been done by the H-1B visas because they've been utilized way over what they were intended to be for sure. But I think when it comes down to immigration problems, H-1B visas represent a very small issue compared to all the other issues that we have.
Yeah, it's not a huge issue, but it does seem Trump seemingly flipped. He had nothing but bad things to say about it, but now he's quite positive of it. He can change his mind.
Without a doubt, on many things.
Yeah, but could it be influenced? I mean, how much did Musk give him? A couple $100 million, right? And
Well,
Elon Musk wasn't even a Trump fan a couple of years ago.
Well, no, I mean, Trump he's still not a traditional Republican, but Trump has moved a lot to the right over the last 15, 20 years, for sure. Even the last 10 years. I mean, look,
this move is coming back, isn't it? He was right against the H-1Bs, and now he's sort of swinging maybe leftwards to be accepting of this immigration.
I don't even know if that's a left or right necessarily. I mean, you could say that was probably started by a Republican president. I don't even know where that program came from, but that was probably started by a Republican because it's definitely pro-business. I don't know why the Democrats were suddenly falling all over themselves. But I think the problem here is that the H-1B visa probably is really good. The intent behind it originally was like, hey, we're going to bring in the best and brightest of the world and bring them to America and make sure that they have a pathway to get here, to work here, and to provide services, good, and be able to create things here in the United States, including other jobs. That was the intent behind it. The problem is, so it's a program that I think philosophically I agree with, but the problem is it's been abused in a number of different ways. And, you know, I don't know, like, I think knowing where Trump stands on that and how is he saying, hey, I support it in the idea or the spirit in which it was, but I have been against it because it's been being abused, but now we're regulating it better. And so I support it again. I don't know where he's at on that. I can tell you Trump has flipped a lot of different ways on firearms. I mean, you know, he was not exactly what I would call a strong Second Amendment candidate, but I think he's been educated because New Yorkers don't know shit about guns, most of them anyways. And, you know, the way they view the world when it comes to, or they view politics around firearms is very different than most of the nation. So, you know, the way he sees that's been very different, and he's kind of evolved in a positive way, I think. And you could say, well, maybe that's to get votes. I don't care. If we can influence, if we can groom our president to be better along with what we want, I'm okay with that. Like, I want you to be able to change positions in a positive way. If you're going back the other way on some really core issues, then I got a problem.
Yeah, but is that changing in a better way? If he was against H-1B visas, because I'm pretty sure he was saying back then it doesn't really work properly and it's kind of a scam. For him to basically now say, well, that thing that I think is a scam that has a lot of problems, and even Elon Musk sort of says it has to be reformed, for him to say, well, I forget exactly what he said. I mean, we had the prep for this a while ago, so I've forgotten the exact details. But I'm pretty sure it was a pretty massive flip to support this flawed program.
The reality is nobody really gives a shit, and that's the truth. No, if Trump flipped tomorrow on H-1B visas, says the greatest, we want to expand it, it would be a problem for a day, and then
we haven't heard much about it for a while. Have we?
Down, I'm like, okay, shut it down. I'm cool with shutting down almost every government program. It would be a positive for a day, and then even the next day, like whatever happened the next day. The problem is, this is like one grain of sand on the beach, good, bad, or indifferent. It really doesn't matter. The core issues that I think that most Americans and why they voted Trump in, he stayed true to, and I think has gotten better. He's gotten better on the Second Amendment. He's gotten stronger. He's put a lot better people into his cabinet, into his, people that are advising him. He's gotten better as a president in this presidency by far than the last one. I do think, and this has been said before in many different areas, I think it was actually such a good thing that President Trump, probably fraudulently, lost the 2020 election, because he is a 10 times better president now than he would have been, going back 4 years ago.
Yeah, I can agree with that. He does seem better in a lot of ways, besides the whole, ethnic cleansing of Gaza thing that we've been, but let's not dig that up again. But, but yeah, no, I know what you mean. And yeah, the H-1B visas, it's not the hugest issue. We haven't really heard about it since the whole kerfuffle or whatever. But then again, we haven't heard too much of Vivek Ramaswamy either, did we? Because that was, I don't think it was handled very well. And especially with Elon Elon Musk basically saying Americans are too retarded to do certain jobs or to be well, he didn't say it, but someone else did, and he liked the tweet or whatever it was. Agreed with it or something like that. It wasn't handled. But then Elon Musk, he's a brand new Republican convert, basically. And he's talking about how the people he needs to purge from the Republican Party that don't agree with him. And he's going to go to war over H-1B visas. And yeah, that was a bit of a mess the way they handled it. But yeah, it's not even the hugest issue, I suppose.
I mean, one of the downsides to this presidency is the fact that the bar is so low that given the last 4 years that Trump doesn't have to do much to look like a freaking rock star. But the fact of the matter is, over the last 4 weeks now, it's been a whirlwind of positive things. And yeah, we can go through and we can critique a little of this, and pull some things out and turn it into controversy. I mean, that's what the media does. But us being the counter media podcast, we don't do that. We're gonna stay on the positive side of that. But overall, I've been pretty pleased with the people that he is added to his cabinet. I'm excited to see RFK in there. Hopefully the HHS secretary. We got, just a bunch of rock stars in this guy. I love the fact that Pete Hegseth was confirmed as, Secretary of Defense.
I'm not as thrilled about that one. But we don't have to get into that. He's very evangelical. He wants to rebuild that third temple in Israel and all this kind of stuff that I'm not a fan of, but I'm sure he's good in other ways.
Military. I think he is the exact right person to rebuild our military. Forget about it. He has no influence on all of those stuff. Like he's going to be
Secretary of Defense in Israel stuff.
What's that?
What Secretary of Defense? No sort of influence on the Israel stuff.
I mean, not on the political side. I mean, he can spew his other opinions on stuff, but I mean, he's going to be focused, and I think he has been. I just was watching some different articles, news things, segments today on some of the things. I mean, right now, U.S. military recruitment is up like the highest it's ever been since like World War II or something like that. Somebody looked that up, but I know recruitment has gone through the roof since.
They must want a trip to Gaza to see the hotels getting built.
Yeah, I mean, I
don't think Trump's going to occupy. I think Israel's
have a condo in Gaza and a Chevrolet in their in the garage of their Gaza condo. Give it all away.
I think Israel's going to do the fighting. I don't think Trump's going to send boots on the ground, but you never know. Maybe they will, and then Hegseth would have an influence on Israel if they're going to invade Gaza, which I don't think they will, and I really hope they don't. And that's not what's been said. I mean, the plan from Trump and Bibi is that Israel will do it. I've been following
Hegseth for the last many years, both on Twitter.
I don't know much about him.
He is extremely resistant to getting any military conflict. I think and that's one of the things that he's very proud of this country. I think he's going to be the ideal Secretary of Defense. I really do, and I think that's exactly the last thing we needed in there was another general or some other, I think he's exactly what we need. I think he's the perfect candidate for that job. He's going to show restraint. He's going to make sure that standards are brought back to the military. He's going to make sure that DEI is completely wiped from the military. I saw a thing today where he's working with DOGE. They're going through that budget line by line, figuring out the fraud, waste, and abuse, which is massive in the military. I think
that will be massive. I mean, trying to order the Pentagon and cut down on that spending, I think no one's really done that or haven't been successful even trying if they have. And there's got to be heaps there.
Yeah, and we know there's massive waste, fraud, and abuse. And I know he's very anti-military industrial complex. He's anti all the corruption that comes along with the U.S. military and everything else is going. I think he's the right guy for the job. And I think if we'd have got another former general in there, which is normally what we go with, or some other jackass politician, it would have been a status quo. Nothing really would have changed. There has been a lot of rhetoric or how we're improving the military, but we wouldn't actually see anything. I think we're going to see action from Pete Hegseth, and I don't think he's going to get involved with the geopolitical dealings of Israel or whether or not they're building temples or anything else. So I think that's that. But it is way past my bedtime, Chris. I know it's early day for you, and you can go another 4 hours, but it's 10:20 for old Gary down
Just
here.
end with this, Wyatt Darrell says, to be what YouTube would consider an extremist, scary GunTube channel, YouTube managed a respectable civil discourse for 2 hours. Don't worry about that last part, even if Chris is wrong, he says. But I have to back up with the other one. I will give Chris credit. At least he stands by his views. I've got more respect for that than someone who flips back and forth to whatever side is applying pressure. So I'll take that. Pat myself on the back before we go. But yeah, I think that was, yeah. And I wasn't.
That's part of going back to the respectable debate. I think if you're going to have respect for a person that you're debating, I don't think the goal can be, hey, I'm going to switch somebody over, or
make them look stupid or whatever.
Or even to win the debate or whatever else. I think that's the problem with the Twitter world that we live in today. It's like, hey, I want to make this person look stupid, and trust me, I do it all the time in the comments. Guilty of that, and proud of that to some extent. But again,
I have some epic dunks on Twitter as well. It's good fun.
So, but you're not necessarily there to win somebody over or even to sway anything. You're just, a lot of times you're just there to make someone look stupid. And again, I think tonight's discussion should be the norm in America, and it's not. And hopefully somebody walks away with, I don't know, learning something, changing their mind on something, or I don't know, maybe for once in our lives we were just good examples of how things should be done. All right. Well, Chris, you got anything else you want to share before we get out of here?
No, I think that's pretty good. A little bit. It's funny. I was arguing about this for like ages in a group chat, and then we spoke a little bit about it. I'm like, I think I'm exhausted. I don't know if I can really debate Israel anymore. Even as all these events were going on, I'm like, look, let's just focus on DOGE, okay? Let's just DOGE or whatever you say. But it's kind of unavoidable, really. But I think it was good. I always have fun with this.
Unless something crazy happens, the next Counter Media podcast will not be on Israel and Palestine. I think we've I think we got as far as we can go on that one.
Bit of a break. Yeah.
Oh yes.
We established I'm not a huge fan, and that's
back all the names to the correct names of military bases. That may not be appreciated in Australia, but it's a big thing here. I think it was so dumb that they did it the first time.
I do have one quick, as always. There's always one more. Bear with me. But this is the last one. All right, and it's a good one. Just talking about renaming things.
Just end it right here.
Oh, it's not even. Damn, it's not working. Okay, my internet's playing up. But basically, I was just going to show you Google Maps. Currently, if you look at the Gulf of Mexico,
America,
it says both. It says Gulf of. Oh, I wanted to see which was. Oh, it says Gulf of Mexico brackets Gulf of America. That's what it says in Australia, and I think most of the world.
Extra taxes put on your ass by the United States government. Google doesn't recognize the correct name. They just need to get their asses taxed all the hell and back. All right, folks. Yeah. Well, I think that is a good note to leave on. Everybody have a wonderful week. Have a good night. And until I come up with a better exit call sign or motto or whatever.
Yeah, you should hurry up with that, but yeah, go on.
Until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.